worry, and wondering as to how we will emerge out of this pandemic as a country and the world at large. It is time like this that lead us to question ourselves, to evaluate and go back to basics in befitting fashion, following from our AWCA 2019 conference. We continue to use this opportunity to ask ourselves even more relevant questions that are necessary to keep us in check. So after some tough deliberation, it culminated in the decision to continue hosting the 2020 conference, despite the odds we are faced within the past few months. Notably, we have received over 100 registrations for this conference, and I was checking earlier, we are sitting at around 88 people that are online, and I'm hoping there's more that are coming, which is a testament to the interest, curiosity, and support gathered by our initiatives. This reinvigoration of such interests is much needed when the world is weary, looking for hope, seeking to build a sustainable future for generations to come. This morning, we seek to ask and find some answers to key questions that South Africans need to be cognizant of in order to emerge victoriously at all levels. Whether you are a student, you're a professional, you're an executive, you're a board member, just a society at large. The AWCA board and subcommittees have worked tirelessly to curate today's panelists, who offer much inspiration and insight, and have generously given of their time and effort to interact with us this morning. I therefore urge you, my esteemed audience, to participate with us in a session where we will listen with not just our ears, but also our hearts, and pledge to walk out of this a better and enlightened individual, capable of intellectualism, sharpening our skills in order to contribute to the workings of South Africa. It is during such discussions that the light bulbs will switch on, the ideas are formulated, and the call to action as a country is realized through pockets of excellence. This discussion is a reimagination of where we want to be as a country, and perhaps it is where we should be by now, recognizing that there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. The conference proceedings are also very much in line with the AWCA's objective to recognize inspirational women who, in spite of and despite the circumstances surrounding them, continue to provide a beacon of hope in a landscape that is hindered by infrastructural challenges, societal ills, and education challenges, of which such exceptional women we honor and blow the horn for. Throughout this morning's interactions, as you listen, we urge you to please continue to donate to the AWCA Bursary Fund, as you have continued to do so in the past, as that is the reason for our being and our sustainability. As an organization, we were unable to host our annual fundraising flagship event, known as the Woman of Substance Gala Dinner, that we usually hold in August due to COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. Aside from the bursary fund, your donations assist the organization's continuity and ability to provide tangible initiatives that further the advancement of chartered accountants in South Africa. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our members, corporate members, and also our sponsors who are the friends of AWCA, who have continued to show support through this difficult time, where the AWCA's funding has been drastically reduced as a knock-on effect of the recent circumstances. With that being said, let us now indulge in some reflections and words of wisdom from our 2019 Woman of Substance, Dr. Vuyo Mahlati. I trust you will stay logged in and participate from the comfort of your homes for the duration of the conference this morning. Let me quickly introduce you. So all in all, ngesiXhosa siye sithi khululani ibhatyi zenu nirelaxe in the comfort of your own homes, and welcome to the AWCA 2020 Women's Month Conference. Before you start, Dr. Mahlati, let me introduce you. Dr. Mahlati has transcended borders and disciplines as a global and thought leader. Her boldness has seen her appointed by presidents and international organizations to tackle situations. Dr. Vuyo, on the other hand, is an innovative social entrepreneur, even though known more for her roles in public policy and development activities locally and globally. She is the president of the African Farmers Association of South Africa, AFASA. In September 2018, she was appointed by the president to chair the advisory panel on land reform in agriculture. The report, released within 6 months, is currently being implemented in government. As a social entrepreneur, she founded a wool and cashmere processing plant in the rural Butterworth, Eastern Cape. Her factory is Africa's first indigenous goats cashmere processing plant. Her award-winning factory has produced a high-value fabric luxury brand, the Dani collection, that has been showcased locally, UK, Europe, and USA. She is serving her second term as a member of South Africa's National Planning Commission that released the National Development Plan. She holds a PhD from the University of Stellenbosch. Her thesis focused on the role of value chains in mainstreaming rural entrepreneurs in global markets. It was the only selected thesis the Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences to be presented at the university's inaugural New Voices in Science colloquium. She obtained her MSc from the UK London School of Economics. Dr. Vuyo has been active in the women's movement as a gender activist for years. These include the South African Women Dialogue, SAWID, where she remains a trustee and chair of the Development Commission. In 2015 to 2019, Dr. Mahlati has served as a global director to the International Women's Forum Board, based in the headquarters of the IWF in Washington, DC. Some of the awards that Dr. Mahlati has received, obviously, the AWCA bestowed her with the 2019 Woman of Substance Award. On the 28th of October 2014, Dr. Mahlati received the Mail and Guardian Southern Africa Trust Individual Award for Drivers of Change. And she also, in 2019, received the Honorary Doctoral Award from the Nelson Mandela University, to name a few. Over to you, our Woman of Substance, Dr. Mahlati. Thank you.
Wow, Yes. Thank you so much, Deputy President, for that introduction. It's always embarrassing to listen to it, but at the same time, it's affirming. Let me greet the President of AWCA, the Deputy President, the board, and the stalwarts and founders of AWCA. Let me also welcome our own Executive Director of UN Women and former President, Deputy President of our country, Mama Uphumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka. Also, we have distinguished speakers and the panelists and all the phenomenal women and men who are in the room today. I am so humbled and honored. It's been such an honor to be the 2019 Woman of Substance. It actually got me to reflect so much about the meaning of that. And I am still busy with that. So I'm continuously thankful to be part of this group. And it's so humbling to see that you are continuing with the work, but also lifting as you rise in terms of the bursary programs. But let me focus on the theme of today, which is about South Africa Reimagined, Leading for the Future. I want to believe that today, this conference today is about changing the narrative first and foremost. We are changing the narrative from saying we want to be included, we want to participate in the economic recovery, in the reimagination. No, we're not saying that. We are here to say we are ready to drive the changing of the order of our country and possibly of the world. And I think that mindset is very important and significant as a starting point, because we wasted so much time trying to convince people to include us. But here's the thing, as we do that, there is a bigger responsibility, and we need to elevate the game. And in elevating the game, we need to ourselves to renew who we are, our perspective, but also learn from those who've been before us. So I put in front of us the view that the whole idea of reimagining for us is about committing to be the drivers of change. It is about ensuring that we get the women who will lead the future, driving the reimagination of our country. And these women must define and shape the new order. Because we wait to get documents and see how we adapt and they're not gender mainstream. That's not what we're talking about. We've moved on. We write the documents.
Yes.
They must see how they mainstream in our order. And it's important because through this, we become true to the saying, you empower a woman, you empower a nation. But I want to say that in order to deal with that, we need a different caliber, which is more a mindset change, because we already are, as the people who are in the room and others. But there is a mindset change that we need to invest in, which starts with reflection, self-mastery. What's important about it is that at this point, we need capable, compassionate, and what I call legacy warriors. And these legacy warriors are pathfinders, they are nurturers, they are integrators. We've lived in silos and fragmentation, and we have actually allowed ourselves to live not just dualistic lives, but so many different lives within one person. I believe that we have an opportunity now to integrate our beings so that they become it in the main issue of what we are about in the reimagining. So basically, this is about getting the change makers from the NGO sector, getting the artists, getting industrialists, getting policymakers, entrepreneurs, and innovators. We go beyond the professions of accounting, you know, your chartered accountants, your doctors, your nurses, who have actually helped us. The doctors and nurses at this point are our lifeline. But we go beyond the technology experts. We go beyond all the various disciplines of sociology and social development. But we say, at this point, we need those legacy warriors, we need those pathfinders, we need those integrators, and we must groom them. And I'm happy to talk in the presence of Usis Pumzile, because we've walked this route before. We were trained in different disciplines, but there was a need pre-94. There were courses for gender mainstreaming, there were courses for critical thinking, even left, right, and center, because your profession was not enough. We are back there, and we need to be, our redesign has to align with the redesign of the mind. So COVID-19 actually has helped us. Our economy was already on its knees, but it laid bare the cracks that we were busy plastering for all these years. We claimed in our country, for instance, that we have food security with social grants, over 17 million people that are receiving, social grants. But it became clear that is not enough. And actually, the walls that would hide the informal settlements and shacks as people go through the beautiful suburbs were actually shuttered and replaced by queues for food parcels. There was a collapse of food systems and value chains that link those that are on the other side, the have-nots. And it was not good to see. We knew it, we know it, we've known it, but it was not good to see. It actually reminded me, as part of this readiness process of systems thinking training, the Innovators Associates, they kind of came up with a very simple construct of systems thinking. And they talk about the tip of the iceberg. There, the base, which is a pyramid, the base of the pyramid is systemic structure. And the middle part of the pyramid is about patterns. And then the tip of the iceberg are events. And what they're showing there is that so often we focus on the symptoms, which are the events, and we become so happy that we're doing something at that level. And our poverty, inequality, unemployment is actually a clear sign that we have all this time focused on investing on events and patterns. We have not touched the systemic structure that determines how these ills continue in our country and the world. And when we are talking about reimagining, I'm mentioning this because if we are going to talk about reimagining and not address the issue of systemic structural faults, then we are wasting our time. Yes, we have supported each other. Yes, there are social relief programs. Everybody came on board. That is commendable and wonderful. But in reimagining, we're going further. In reimagining, we are saying we need to make sure that nobody is left behind. We need to make sure that we change the cultures, the structures, and we bring ourselves to the table. What's very important as well is to acknowledge the changes that are taking place within our country, because all these are not going to be possible if our focus is not on social equity with economic equity. So it's important for us to push for social protection, very critical where we are. But at the same time, we're looking for those solutions that push to self-reliance of the communities and families and ensure that where we get to is a resilient and sustainable development environment. So leading with purpose is basically a very important part of what is imagined. So my Imagine South Africa is a country with people who are bold enough to tackle the system structures, systemic, to unleash the great potential that we have in this country. And it is important because it is about addressing the imbalances and injustices. If we are not focusing on that, we'll continue to talk about gender-based violence because there are new forms of violating women. But for women to be able to fight these, it becomes important that we deal with the structural issues. Then they are themselves empowered to actually address these things. So the need is that the legacy warriors should be prepared to build and not just take. It starts with that self-mastery as we lead an ethical and moral revival from home, community, and the work. So for me, leading with purpose is very critical. Purpose is a common thread that connects the past, the present, and the prosperity of the future. It is about taking from what we've gone through, the tough times. It is about learning and sharing. So we need leaders who are having the clarity of purpose at all times. But it's important for us to check the nobility of that purpose, because everybody has a purpose, but the nobility of the purpose for the legacy warriors becomes the issue. So the other issue I just wanted to raise before I go towards my conclusion is the issue of COVID-19 and technology, and generally how technology has come in and we have to embrace it. We've been forced into technology. It has been tough because our lives have changed, but we're lucky because there was also a presidential commission on 4IR that was beginning to assist us as far as the meaning and how this cuts across. They've just released the report. And it becomes important for us to actually ensure that in the reimagining, we are not left behind. And they talk about 4IR, Fourth Industrial Revolution, as the new epoch in social and economic life. But most importantly, the technological advancements connect between the biological, physical, and the digital world. And this is unprecedented, they say, and unpredictable. But now, my question and my challenge also as president of the African Farmers Association is how do we ensure that we are obsessed about making sure that this is going through all levels? How do we change the face of the woman farmer, the subsistence farmer who still has a hoe with a little piece of land that she doesn't own? She's a custodian of for her son and the next son. But how do we make sure that these advancements are actually catapulting people? Because part of that food insecurity is about the low productivity within our areas and the food systems that don't go and reach over there. So the critical thing as we think about this is to not just say we will advance here with technology. The integrators I'm talking about and the pathfinders are people who are going to appreciate that woman farmer, rural woman farmer, has amazing indigenous knowledge and authenticity that can actually change the lives globally. We find new innovations from people and places that we were not looking at before. Our eyes have to shift. So in the reimagination, we have a challenge to actually bring the broader us into the picture. And my last conclusion points talk to a reflection of where we have been And I want to say, it's important for us to check our journey. The emancipation of women post-1994 was not easy. It was pushed by gender activists, women who pushed all the way and actually looked and sought for those with specific skills and tried everything. They were pioneers. We salute them. But unfortunately, the environment was not conducive and welcoming. The organizational culture remained. We saw women and we got frustrated because we saw women fitting in. We didn't see women changing things because they were overwhelmed. And if you rock the boat, somehow you'd be capsized out one way or another. But now that is changing. We're actually seeing women getting their rhythm. They are now the drivers of change. They are bold. But I want to also believe that that is being made possible by the sisterhood networks that have created the women's movement across the board, professionally, women's rights, everything. We must never underestimate that value, including the AWCAs. It actually assists in giving us confidence. It assists in amplifying our voices. It also assists in making sure that we are happy to bring who we are as women into the boardroom. So it's important to appreciate that this comes with responsibility. It is not easy. We have seen that actually the problems that we are facing of poor leadership, corruption, and all the other ills that we have seen are not just about men. We've seen women as well, part of that problem. But today we are seeing, let us be part of the solution. So we are onozala, singonozala, the ones who give birth. Singonozala, the ones who nurture and build nations. So it becomes important for us to ensure that we reclaim the space of the ethical and purposeful leadership. It's time, and I am so grateful for this opportunity. And may you have a great conference. Thank you so much to everyone.
Wow, 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 wow. I am charged. Thank you, ma'am, for the encouragement and the challenge, mostly the challenge. We are no zalas. We are going to give birth and we are going to nurture and build nations. Thank you for that encouragement. What I'm just going to highlight on one thing that I picked on your Reimagine South Africa. A Reimagine South Africa for Dr. Vuyo is a country with people who are bold enough to tackle the systematic structures, not people who are going to walk aside the structures, not people who are going to coexist within the structures, not women who are going to fit into the structures, but women who are going to dismantle such structures. And thank you very much, Doctor. I believe that a number of us are charged or ready to go, and there's more that is to come throughout the day. And I've noted, participants, that there are a number of questions that are coming through and comments. We might not be able to address all the comments and the questions, but I will read some, just some based from the speech. There's one question that really came, and I know as a country we talk about collaboration a lot. We collaborate, we talk about collaboration. From Metri Fossa, there's a comment that says, how do we, Dr. Vuyo, how do we ensure that we collaborate? Let me read the question. It says, Dr. Vuyo, can you explain a bit on how we collaborate and what collaboration requires for a strong leadership? Just briefly, I know that there's no time, but I will not leave this because it's critical that as women we work together. I know in our next session we talk into United Nations Women Executive Director. I always read UN women as United Nations women, and I said it's united women against all the social ills in the country. So if you could just share with us, Dr. Vuyo, on how we collaborate and how collaboration requires a strong leadership.
Okay, I think I have one answer for that, which actually I had jotted down. The collaboration is the key. That's why we need everybody across the board. But I believe that at the center of the collaboration, my challenge actually to AWCA and other women's movements that I'm associated with and not associated with, is to do what was done when I was relating to what Mrs. Phumzile did, Nabo Woos and others. We need now to recraft, redesign courses on this new thinking to get these integrators, get a caliber of leadership. And they must come across and work with the higher education institutions and others. Because it's important that, you know, we have to appreciate the fact that the moral fiber does not affect the unemployed and the uneducated. It is everybody in the country. And we need to reorient the leadership at all levels in the pipelines to appreciate that. So collaborations are in ensuring that we understand the issues around the systemic structure and how, because we can't all tackle, it's too big, then we make sure that these ones tackle this part. You know, we did a study once as AWCA, where we're looking at women in different industries, where they are. And it was useful to see in mining and construction, in technology, and then you have conversation with Sawima, with, you know, the different, to say, from your side, can we make sure that we push these numbers? We make sure that we get the right people. So I think that collaborations now need to be more intentional. I cannot answer it better than that. They need to be more focused, purposeful, and intentional.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ladies, let's go and collaborate. And it's not about signing agreement and partnership agreements, but it's collaborating and getting work done. Thank you for that. We are now going to move on to a fireside chat where we're going to start up some fire and ignite the passion in our young women in this room and from the speech that we've just received. But before we get into that, Dr. Vuyo talked about looking back. And our theme is reimagine the South Africa that we want. But I'm gonna, before we get into the time machine of looking forward, I'm gonna ask us to just go back a little bit and to look back and assume 1990 or 1992, where it's 1992 and we are faced with a pandemic. And during those times, I just want us to think about where we would be, specifically with women in mind, with the responsibility that the women have towards families and families' health and the well-being of communities amidst the structural inequalities that existed at the time, in the pre-1994. It would not have been a good picture. And I'm sending us back there because we need to realize the work that has been done by great women who have dismantled those defined and unseen structures that existed and continue to do that today. And I'm highlighting it to young women before we get into the discussion to note that we are privileged to have amongst us in our country and in the session today, women who have proactively and consciously worked hard to tilt that gender inequality scale and continue to do that to this day. So today we will be joined, and I welcome Mayor Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women since August 2013. She has served as the Deputy President of South Africa from 2005 to 2008, and before which she held ministerial positions and was a member of Parliament. focusing on human rights, equality, and social justice. She began as a teacher and gaining international experience at the worldwide AWCA. She has also founded the nonprofit Umlambo Foundation. Mem Lambo Mnuka, we do welcome you today. Thank you for the time, and we are looking forward to the ignition in the passion of our young women in South Africa so that we can passionately go forward and change that narrative that Dr. Vuyo referred to. I welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for this warm welcome. Greetings to the AWCA members and to everybody who is in this conference. As usual, AWCA does not disappoint. You are on point. You tackle the issues that are important at the moment and issues that are relevant to all of us and for making our society better. Let me also thank Vuyo for her inspiring talk. Vuyo, when I grow up, I want to be you. And say that it's wonderful to see how Vuyo has branched into many directions, looking for solutions and demonstrating that things can be done. I am also a proud owner of her wonderful products, very fashionable ladies. So I really encourage you to look for the Dedani collection. It's really something to be proud of. I also want to underscore the challenges that she highlights, the challenges of systemic change, because we cannot be fighting wars one by one. We have to find a way of changing the whole system so that everybody who is affected by the dysfunctional system becomes an instant beneficiary. Yes, we still have to support to make sure that the changes that we bring about work, but it's important to really focus on systemic change. When we talk to young people, though, the young women, we really need to make sure that they understand the importance of collaboration so that they can make these big changes, because big changes and big systems change is not something you can do alone. You need to be part of a collective to help you to do this. And of course, the type of leadership that is needed today. I just think that we have a responsibility to constantly remind young people and young men and men and women of all ages that gender is a societal problem, that everyone has a responsibility. It's not a corner that has to sort itself out. It's actually it's the plenary. It's not a side event. It has to be tackled at the center of things. And when we talk about ethical leadership, we are talking about to young people, the importance of young people to know that corruption and abuse of resources of the public is not okay. So we need to make sure to live that ourselves, but also to actually repeat it again and again, because I think we have just reached that point where it is important to talk about these things all the time and not take for granted that they are understood. We have this pandemic in our lifetime. We've never seen anything like this. And every pandemic has got a gender dimension. This pandemic is not different. It has a gender dynamic dimension, so that's why women have to be in the mainstream of addressing the pandemic, because it impacts on them most. In the world, about 2/3 of the people who have lost their jobs because of the pandemic are women. So if we talk about fiscal stimulus, and this is for you, AWCA, can you really analyze what these stimulus are about and how are they directed to the women in the informal sector, in the formal sector, in the hybrid space of economies, but also women also who need social protection? How are they being crafted so that they truly respond to the issues of women? We are trying to do this work all over the world with governments, with women like yourselves, female economists and feminist economists, to really interrogate the relevance of these sectors, because governments will not have fiscal spaces after this. If women fall off the boat at this time, they may never be an opportunity again. So this gender dimension of the pandemic is important for us to understand. Of course, the violence. We don't want short-term interventions. We must be fighting to flatten the pandemic of gender-based violation with the same zeal as we have had to do for Corona. And this must not be the women. This must not be the Minister of Women, who is underfunded and has very little in her toolbox because she does not get the right resources. This is a system-wide fight. Again, systems are important. We are fighting killers. We are fighting people who are murderers, who are fighting people who are also very crafted in dodging the laws and the requirements that sometimes are imposed on them by the courts. You therefore need the best minds in investigation, in forensic, in everything that you do when you are fighting a serious crime. This is not something that just social workers must do. Social workers are gentle people who play a particular role to assist society, but we put all these matters in front of them and we say women, NGOs are the ones who must defeat gender-based violence. It is not fair. We actually need better to be served. And in Corona, when we fight this and we are fighting to build a better society, this must be a better society where this issue is taken to a much higher level. And of course, in this pandemic, we've also seen the burden of care that is on women. Women are the silent, unpaid people, have always been, who shoulder economy, whose contribution does not show up in the GDP. We need to unpack that. We need to find a way of making sure that because the hospitals are full and sick people have all kinds of reasons why they cannot get care at the in the health institutions, women become the caregivers at home. They have to sacrifice their own lives for children, for elderly people, for sick people, for disabled people. The infrastructure of the country must build a care system that provides these services so that women can go to work and be in the labor market and not be forced to stay at home and be the unpaid caregivers of society. So this is one thing that the pandemic has shown, and there are many countries now who are grappling with the issue of the care economy. We must do that in South Africa. Who knows, we've been talking about this for years and not quite getting a hearing. We must make sure that this time we don't lose it. And lastly, for you, AWCA, not only do I need you to look into the this fiscal stimulus, I need you to fight with everything you had for leadership wherever you are, to be the influencers, to be the woman who controls and demands and makes sure on the table you are being heard, because many of you have that privilege, and we must close this gap of 25%. Global average of women leadership is at 25%. We are talking about parity, and parity is 50. So please bang the tables. Let's all work together across the world to make sure that in this first half of this decade, we close this gap of the underrepresentation of women. The sooner, the better. And some of you are in very strategic positions. So the young women, as they enter into the workplace, they must just tell themselves, "Ngizophatha apha. Ndize apha ndizophatha and ndizotshintsha izinto." Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ladies, again, we are being called to take up with boldness the roles and not positions, roles that we are taking up in society, whether in the public space, whether in the sector, and lead and change. Mayor Phumzile, you mentioned that we need to, you charged AWCA to go and fight with everything that we have, to be those leaders and to demand to be heard. And I just want you to briefly just talk to the young woman who is in this room, who might be thinking that it's for the ministers who are responsible for women, it's for those CEOs who are charged with those responsibilities. Talk to that young woman who's sitting in this room to say, with the opportunities you have right now, how do you step into that South Africa reimagined with boldness?
Well, I will say to the women, because you are not a minister, forget about the minister. You need to be the change agent yourself. You need to create the future that we want. You need to be the change that you want. Of course, we have to hold our leaders accountable, but as Vuyo was saying, there's a level of being overwhelmed in that space, that they need help, and to the extent that as institutions like AWCA, UN, all of us are trying to surround them and to facilitate help. And I think, as all of you know, it is also not easy sometimes, even when you want to help the help received. But that must not discourage you. You just have to keep on keeping on. But for young people who do not have maybe the possibility and the platform to already influence the corridors of power, they have to work with what they have and where they have. There must be the change in the spaces that they have. There must be initiators and innovators. And I'm talking about the young women who are young in age, and I'm talking those of us who are young hearts, because we also have to innovate ourselves for this new normal that we need to influence. As we celebrate Beijing 25, we are saying that this is the year for intergenerational leadership. We are calling ourselves Generation Equality. This is the theme for celebrating Beijing 25, where we are saying the youngest and the oldest must hold together, because each one of us bring different contribution to the table. And those who are higher and older, who have better access to positions of power, who show how they can assert themselves. We have the likes of Gloria Serobe, who is a veteran of this organization, who has taken a difficult job in Solidarity Fund and is fighting with everything she has. When you are given that chance, they must know who to figure because you are there. But there may be younger women who do not have that possibility. So where they are, they have to be the lights and make the changes. They must speak out. They must be willing to initiate the changes. And I have met many young women in different spaces in life who are making changes. I just want to, for instance, talk about a woman called Rebone Tau, who has just written a book on the rise and fall of the ANC Youth League. Hey, guys, this is not a small subject. She is a member, and she actually reflects very critically about what the ANC Youth League has done and not done, and the need for change. That is bravery. Her book is coming out next week. I know a woman in Gambia called Dure, who is our global and Africa ambassador specifically on ending child marriage and female genital mutilation. She is from a Muslim family. Her father also was a religious leader, but she took the system by the hands, having been a victim of both herself. And now she has started a movement in the world that is changing and is creating more young leaders who are standing up and saying, not another girl lost to an old man, supposedly to be her husband, not another girl to be cut and to be mutilated. We have Farai Mubaiya, who has co-founded the youth-led movement serving organization that deals with African matters. So these girls are not picking up on easy battles. And each one of us, there's a battle we can find. And I just want to highlight something that I have noticed at Umlambo Foundation, which is just a modest foundation. In this time of Corona, I am working with school principals about the change in their leadership style, the need to be resilient, the need obviously to keep healthy, the need to become grief counselors because of the death that the students, the parents, the community is experiencing. The need to be honest, ingajonjwa i-PPE bethuna ezikolweni. And the need for them to make sure that even as they fight with government, they must be solution oriented, and the need for them to embrace the digital infrastructure, the digital divide to be closed between and within communities, because this is the only way to go forward. We are calling this group of principals the community of practice. They are South Africans, but they go also beyond South Africa. It is amazing how you see amongst these principals, those who will complain about the fact that I at 18, there was nobody to help me to take a temperature zabantwana because the other teachers of the other grades are not coming to school. Hey, dude, you are the principal. Call the people to come to school to do the job. There are parents who are willing to volunteer, and these are the other principals telling them. So this is just to show also we need each other, to counsel each other, to challenge each other. And with young people, it is the same. And I trust you, AWCA, for the contribution that you make as you mentor young people, that you can show them how they can be, because there's nothing more powerful than mentorship. If people see people who are like them doing great things, that is the biggest confidence booster, more than anything else we can ever give them. I see it also in the UN all the time. We have now relatively a higher number of African leaders, asipitizeli, because we want the young people who are African in the UN to see that there's possibilities for them to bring about changes. So wherever you are, just take your role of that of being a leader. There is no time for us as women now to leave the space. We have to be in the space. We have to dominate it, not with arrogance. Dominate it. Also, don't have to antagonize all men except the bad ones. We need to win a lot of men also to do their job and to make sure that they also use the powers that they have to bring about meaningful changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Young people, we are charged. We are charged, we are supported. I'm young in age, young at heart, go out and take up the spaces or take up the corners. You don't have to be on a higher platform. Whatever it is that you are doing, make sure that you are a driver of change. Thank you very much, Mem Lambo. We will make you proud as young people in Africa. And as AWCA, we've heard the challenge. We're talking about fiscal stimulus. Let's be involved in there and how this can be directed to addressing challenges that women face. And let's also discuss women issues at the right tables and the right issues, not fighting, not antagonizing, but to bring about solutions. Thank you very much. We are touched to go out and make a difference and change. And now we will get into the discussion where we are going to make that change in the economic landscape of South Africa. How do we see our economy? How do we imagine the economy of South Africa that we want? Thank you, Tengiwe.
Thank you very much, Mpho, for that introduction and wonderful discussion with Mam Phumzile. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, to our conference. So this will be our first panel discussion where we talk about the economy of South Africa and how we are reimagining it and how we can have a participative role as women. Women in leadership have blazed a trail of solidarity during the past few months in assuming decision-making positions that contribute in participation of our economy. The plight of the SMMEs has also been brought to the fore due to the pandemic. Funding and access, therefore, as well, has been quite a topic that has been discussed in a number of platforms. We have realized as well that government cannot do this on their own. So government cannot be expected to just take over everything as far as the issues we are dealing with are concerned. So today I have invited experts to share their insights into the challenges that we are facing as females in contributing and maybe also participating within our economy. In my panel, I am not alone, of course. I've got Umam Shirley Mashaba, who is a CEO at the PWC in the Southern Region and Regional Senior Partner as of July 2019. She is a partner at PWC. She has been for the past 16 years. She is a qualified chartered accountant and also a chartered director in Southern Africa, and has over 27 years of internal, external audit, risk management, compliance, and governance experience within the private and the public sector across all industries. She's published a number of articles in professional journals. She's also a renowned speaker and has presented in conferences in international space, regional space, and also locally. She served a number of boards. She serves on a number of boards, but one of them being the IIA in South Africa, and chairs its audit, finance, and risk management for the past 6 years. She also served as a chief audit executive for the National Department of Justice since 1994 to 2004. Welcome, Ma'am Shirley. She's not alone today. So with her, we have Sis Zulu, who is the CFO of Telkom since July 2018. She joined Telkom in 2016 as a deputy group CFO, where she was responsible for assisting the CFO with strategic analysis, planning, including development of financial plans for the organization. Welcome, Sis Zulu. And finally, to conclude my panel, I have Sis Zizi Ponyanga, who is a qualified chartered accountant who has over 15 years of experience in financial management, financial development, or rather development finance, risk management, and external audits. She's worked in various organizations such as the IDC, EY, yay! Kagiso Media, and until recently, at the end of April, she spent 6 years of her time as a CEO of the Old Mutual Masisizane Fund, driving entrepreneurship development and funding for SMMEs. Such exciting things. While she's on sabbatical for the last 3 months, she before she goes on to a new role. She is keeping herself busy with social enterprise called Makoti Assists, and an initiative aimed at creating jobs for rural women who would otherwise be unemployed. She also sits on a number of boards of listed companies such as Adat IT and Green Road Bank. Zizipo is also a Executive Director for the Black Management Forum Investment Limited and Italtal Limited, where she stepped down in order to prepare for her next career path in July 2020. Such exciting panel. Welcome, ladies, and good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Ma'am Shelley, as we all know, the profession has had some rough publicity shown on it in the recent past. In your reimagination of the economic change through gender equality, what do you think, or how do you think the commitment to quality professional services contributes to restoring trust that our society, that we would want our society to have as a profession?
Thank you so much for such a brief introduction. And if you allow me, I will start by sharing my opening remarks, and then I will have to answer the questions. Good morning, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I was really inspired by the previous speakers. Really, a lot of wisdom that we have to take from the two ladies. So my view is that South Africa will only be able to materially improve the lives of all South Africans and deliver on the promise of 1994 if we are able to kickstart and sustain high levels of inclusive economy. And it should be really driving the economic growth. South Africa entered into a technical recession last year, as you know, and with the arrival of COVID-19 at the beginning of March, it is clearly evident that the associated economic and social ramifications of South Africa are more severe than previously anticipated. The business community response to COVID-19 pandemic expects the GDP to decline between 8 to 10% in 2020, recovering in the next 2 years to come to the right levels with muted growth thereafter. It forecasts a budget deficit of 13.3% for this fiscal year. Meanwhile, government debt is escalating to record levels in both absolute terms and a percentage of GDP. In the absence of growth, enhancing structural reforms that were spoken about, budget deficits are expected to remain high, and government debt is expected to exceed 100% of GDP in 2023. Budget deficits remain above 13% of GDP. It is my view that the nation has arrived at a crossroad. Protecting the status quo with only marginal change looks in an accelerated downward trend, while a committed leadership willing to make difficult, though unpalatable choices focused on appropriate policies which enable investment and the inclusive growth can decisively improve the economic and social trajectory of the country. The devastating impact of COVID-19 presents an opportunity to reimagine South Africa, but we have to do this, all of us. South Africa business has really adopted a multidisciplinary approach for an accelerated economic recovery strategy. This strategy must indicate that it has been presented to government, and government agree that they don't necessarily have capacity. They have to have the collective, their social partners, to be able to, successfully implement it so that it benefits everyone. This harnesses South Africa's potential in the shortest possible time by leveraging all resources across government and their social partners so that we can deal with these challenges that we face. But the unique collective can only succeed if all constituents work in unison to address our economic and social challenges. So I must say, when it comes to this economic recovery strategy that was presented by business, it has 12 key initiatives that if maybe they are effectively implemented, we will see, the investments flowing into the country. We will see business confidence rising from 5% where it is. And then we will also see, a creation of a lot of jobs. The economists are predicting 1.5 million jobs that are going to be flowing through the country. So now let me try and answer the question that you asked, to say, when it comes to profession, what is the contribution really?
Yes.
You will know that our profession has been under a lot of attack. We have been very silent for a very, very long time. But I think it's now time for us to really rise up and address the issues. And how are we doing that? We have learned the lessons. We believe that restoring trust in society is fundamental. We have the South African Profession Trust Initiative in place. It's a structure which is comprising of CEOs from audit firms, assurance leaders. What is the role of that structure is really to make sure that we come up with a responsive plan to deal with issues around ethics, issues around audit quality, issues around independence, governance, public interest and stakeholder gap. As you know, there is a stakeholder gap out there and there's some work to be done. So what does this mean? We are going to see this draft document that is on the table, is not yet out, with 63 recommendations, which are going to be dealing with all the items that I alluded to. Those 63 recommendations, my wish and my comfort is that all the audit firms are going to adopt that document and make sure that they successfully implement documentation. Really, it's around starting to involve regulators like AWCA, involving chartered accountants, other stakeholders like the Auditor General, everybody else around the profession, so that at least we see ourselves rotating firms, rotating partners, rotating auditors, making sure that we teach ethics from the early stage at university level, at secondary levels, making sure that we keep on upskilling our people. I think the previous speaker indicated that having a chartered accountant as a profession is not enough. We need to see ourselves upskilling ourselves, reskilling ourselves, so that at least when we talk about integrated reports, it's not only focusing on financial information, it's also focusing on non-financial information. The transparency reports for companies, they need to have more and comprehensive information, robust audits. We want to start seeing that. Dr. Pumzile Mlambo spoke about investigations. We can see in the country there's a lot of corruption. We are well positioned as professionals to really be able to help government to address those challenges.
Thank you very much, Mesheli. That is very, very insightful, and I think it encapsulates all that I wish to find out or gather from your view of things. And Metsulu, just from your experience in the government space or in the public sector, what would you say would be root causes for what we could call bad governance? What do you see? Just so that as we reimagine, we first position ourselves as to this is the situation, and how do we then reimagine, or what do we need to do to get to that point where there's good governance? Metsulu?
Thank you very much, Sis Lenyiwe.
Sorry, you just muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, firstly, I think happy Women's Month to all the ladies out there, and good morning to all the ladies as well as the gentlemen that have really graced us with their presence this morning. Very good question, Shelley. I mean, sorry, Lenyiwe. I think for me, there are a number of challenges really that, are the cause of bad governance. And I've seen it as well, in my past experience. Firstly, I think as a start, we actually need an education system. We currently have, an education system that continues to be imbalanced. And if you take what we are seeing currently during the pandemic, you realize that those children whose parents can afford connectivity, mainly in private schools and what we used to call the Model C schools, are actually being schooled from home with minimal disruption, while schooling in the townships actually has been hugely disrupted.
And this, in my view, will actually only entrench the social disconnect that we currently have even further. It will continue to create a society that lacks social cohesion and a great deal of imbalance. And what we will see, therefore, is unemployment continuing to increase as we see now. And when that happens, obviously poverty will kick in, and out of desperation, this will result in increased crime and a wide spread corruption and greed. And I think for me that was important. Just how do we look at the education system, because it is actually one of the main challenges that we have that have led to bad governance. The second one for me, I think, is in my view, really political patronage, where we have seen appointments, particularly in the SOEs, being made on the basis of political ties. And in these instances, you see that we've seen that political agendas are usually at the center when deciding on appointments of other board members or even key leadership, and the expertise and the integrity of the board members and those in key position and management are overlooked. And therefore, in such instances, you realize that politicians will then pay less attention to selecting the right people on the job with the right level of skills and competence. And as such, as a result, such practices have actually resulted in board members protecting the interest of ministers and not the interest of all stakeholders, including the citizens of the country. I mean, we have seen this in SOCs during the state capture, where most NEDs were placed on boards to come and fulfill what was called a mandate, but had very little understanding of the businesses that they needed to play an oversight role on, or had never been on boards in some of them of major companies, but in fact ended up looting the funds of those SOCs. One of the things I think that has also led to bad governance is also, for me, the lack of policy framework or policy frameworks that are probably bureaucratic and rigid. So there's a need for clear policy direction or regulatory framework to ensure that we do not have the loophole that we have seen, the lack thereof creating. And I mean, I just want to give an example. What we've seen is that even with policies and procedures, it's been said that South Africa probably has some of the best, but the lack of implementation or some of the loopholes actually make people to start, doing things that they are not supposed to do, or things that are unsavory. And actually what we have seen as well is that, Black economic empowerment in most cases has actually been used as a front to be able to advance those type of interests that that we need. One of the things as well for me, I think, is probably and most important is the lack of accountability for wrongdoing. We really need individuals to face the full might of the law and be charged for corporate crimes, so that people can think twice before committing crimes. I think most people have actually seen a clip on social media from the Prime Minister of Singapore, when he was asked about how they deal with corruption in the country. And he gave an example of one of his ministers who actually was not involved in any bribe of some sort, but actually because he received a gift from one of the service providers, I think that's what it said, was actually made an example and was taken to jail. So we actually need those type of things to happen in our country for us to start having confidence that people will be held accountable for their wrongdoings. I mean, we've seen now ESCOM is charging former executives and some board members in a civil court of law to recover funds embezzled. But we need punitive measures, and really we need these people to face the full might of the law. And maybe last but not least on my side, anyway, is probably weakened institutions as well that have led to bad governance. The last few years have seen some of our Chapter 9 institutions and law enforcement agencies weakened in their ability to actually execute their duties, and therefore resulting in the right checks and balances with regards to transgressions by officials be taken up. So very, very important that, you know, we address those things to really address the issues of bad governance in our country overall, because those are the challenges that
Yes.
that we will see going forward if we do not address those things. Yeah.
I can already reimagine this future that you explaining for us in the public sector. If we've got, you know, stronger institutions, education imbalances sorted, which we'll tap on a little bit in our next panel discussion, and policy frameworks that are properly implemented and monitored would really put us into a better South Africa with participation that really makes an impact for the country we wish to have. Thank you very much for that, Sis Tulu. It really is putting us into a space of we get an understanding of where we are in terms of the public sector and where we would wish to go. And with that, I'd like to bring in Sis Zizipho, where we talk about, from her experience as the CEO of the Old Mutual Masisizane Fund. You know, you heard Dr. Vui talk about the importance of collaboration and what, you know, she puts to us as a challenge to push forward and forge forward with collaboration. What have you seen, or what would you say as your insight in terms of grassroots collaboration that will have an impactful meaning towards economic growth or the future as we reimagine it?
Thank you very much. Thank you. The future is now, by the way. So I really, really appreciate the conversations that we're having with AWCA today. So it's important to have conversations that are going to solve real life problems. So for me, when you talk about grassroots collaboration, often people talk about lack of funding or lack of access to funding. I actually believe that even before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was funding available both from private sector and public sector. And with COVID, we've seen a lot of organizations that are focused on SMME really coming together. I think there was a survey that was done called Combat COVID SMME survey that sought to really understand what the impact of SMME, what the impact of COVID-19 is on SMME. It is said that one out of 3 SMMEs will cut salaries by between 75% and 100%. With a prolonged lockdown, about 70% of SMMEs will not survive and will retrench their workers. So your question about collaboration is a very important one. How do we join forces and not work in silos as organizations that really seek to revive the spirit of entrepreneurship and SMME in South Africa? It is said that SMMEs are the backbone of this economy. They employ over 50% of the workforce and contribute just about the same, if not more, towards the GDP of South Africa. So collaboration is not an option, it's a necessity. It's something that we really have to drive. There are a lot of initiatives, as I've said. I think the previous speaker spoke about the Solidarity Fund, where both corporates and individuals contributed towards that to help with the current pandemic, but also with the previous speaker talking about the challenges that we face in government. It's also important for us to highlight the positives that government is doing. National Treasury has made available over 200 billion rands in loan guarantee scheme for SMME reliefs. The Department of Small Business has made available a lot of money for relief in the SMMEs as well. Development finance institutions like the IDC and others, including commercial banks, by the way, have got relief funds. And if entrepreneurs have got debt with those institutions, they must go and speak to their funders and ask for payment breaks for restructuring their debt so that they can ease a burden that is expected of them to repay the loans. And lastly, if I may highlight, corporate South Africa has also come on board. You know, there are enterprise and supplier development programs that are offered. So corporate has patient funding to assist SMMEs to really not sink with the stats that I've given you, that SMMEs are likely to retrench a number of workers. SMMEs are likely not to survive due to this prolonged lockdown. It's important for entrepreneurs to really spend time researching what is available out there, what help is available, and speak to their creditors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zizipo, for that insight. And my next question was going to talk to your developmental finance background, but you've touched on it very well, and thank you very much for just bringing everything together quite nicely for me and making my job slightly easier. So thank you very much for that. And you know, we had from Phumzile that only 25% of global leaders are women. And you know, there's a need for us to get involved. There's a need for us to create more space for other women in leadership. And with that said, we've got a few questions in our Q&A, and not only to you, Zizipo, but we've got a question from Triforsa, and the question is, how do we address the elephant in the room, that is being racism in the workplace? So I'll give each speaker a minute, 60 seconds, just to tap on that question. I think it's a very valuable one, and you know, with the experience of the panels and, you know, different sectors, I think it'll be really nice for us to pull it together and have a view from each panel. So Zizipo, because you know, I already have you here,
yes,
you can go ahead.
Thank you for that question, Triforsa. It is the elephant in the room, but I would like to highlight that what I've seen with myself and the leaders, women leaders that are younger, is that we are not afraid to address the issues head on. I'm one businesswoman leader who will address the issues head on, not necessarily in a disrespectful manner, but I will not let it slide. If I feel that for whatever reason there's racism or an issue that I'm picking up with a colleague or a team member of that nature, it's important for me as a leader to address the issue, and also ensure that those that are coming behind me are aware that as business women leaders, particularly those that are African, that have faced these issues, we are aware of it. The minute you face such a situation, raise it with your leaders, and we have the responsibilities as leaders to address the issue head on and not let it slide.
Very much.
Come in there.
Yes, Ma'am Shelley, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I have a lot of you know, practical experiences, and I will agree with Zizipo that you know, if you are given the seat at the table as a leader, as the previous speakers already indicated, you are a trailblazer, you are a pathfinder, so you need to have the courage to really be super assertive. You know, I'm underlining super assertive because all of us, I think, we're trained to be assertive, but you need to be extraordinarily super assertive. So it's about being honest, having honest and candid discussions. Recently, you know, within our profession, you know that we do a lot of thought leadership. We have panels, you know, we are geared to work virtually, you know, we have different seminars. So the recent seminar, you know, I didn't even know about it. I just got an email from one of the colleagues saying that, Shelley, what is this? you know, the reason why they're sending it to me is because they know that I'm at the leadership level. So really,
Yes.
that courage for me to say, I need to address it. Otherwise, if I don't address it, I will be like, I'm trying to adapt to whatever which is there.
Yes.
So what I
Yeah.
did was to really, you know, talk to the person who I know that is the head of whatever division and say, you know, we are not sending the right message to our people. We are not sending the right message to the market. So make sure that you tell me what you're gonna do. As I'm sitting here, you know, that problem was resolved on the day, on the same day, you know, because we cannot afford to have a panel of only white males. We need to have
Yes.
an inclusive panel. Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Shaylee, for that. I think that, you know, again, as Phumzile was saying, we need to speak up, and that for me, I think really shows that, you know, you're speaking up, you're dealing with things as they come, and ensuring that they are addressed. Tulu,
Yeah,
would you
and I mean,
wanna?
just to add, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what my fellow panelists have said. We really need to tackle it, you know, head on. We should not be tiptoeing around it. And I think the policies that we have in the workplace needs to be
Yes.
really watertight, so that, you know, we can take action against those such conduct which we do not want in the workplace. And I think us as leaders, we have to play our part to make sure that the minute we see that, we actually tackle it without any hesitation and without any waste of time. So I couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies. And thank you very much, everyone that has been sending through their questions. And we've come to the end of our first panel discussion. And thank you very much, ladies, for all those contributions. We've gotten to understand that trust in our profession is being restored. Slowly but surely we'll get there. Governance is going to be in a better place when we reimagine the future with women contribution, of course, that women are making in all these areas, with whether public or private sector, and SMMEs are very much supported to function, and you've highlighted a number of things that can assist them in making sure that they are resilient through this time and not necessarily shut down. Thank you very much, ladies. I look forward to you joining
Thank
us
you.
for the rest of the discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I will hand over to Mpo, my colleague, to do our first reveal of our AWCA Recognition Awards 2020. Mpo, over to you.
Thank you again, ma'am, and thank you to the ladies for the boldness to tackle barriers so that we ensure an inclusive economic participation in South Africa. Thank you again. Now we're getting into the exciting time where we are going to be looking at recognition awards for women who have reflected such boldness in the spaces and in the areas where they operate. AWCA Recognition Awards for 2020. Yes, we are not meeting in one room. We're not going to go on stage, but we're going to assume a virtual stage and a virtual awarding. And this is traditionally an award that we hold at our flagship event, which is a Women of Substance fundraising banquet. Even though we don't have that event this year, it is critical that we continue to recognize work that has been done, because work continues. We might not physically meet, but work does continue. And we recognize those women and celebrate those exceptional Black women, chartered accountants who have excelled in their respective fields. And it's not only that, these powerhouses have also demonstrated a consistent track record of excellence and developed others as they were leading, and they have demonstrated outstanding leadership. This process of arriving to the final awards and to the recipients, AWCA has facilitated a nomination process to which all members who are in this room and all members who might not be here have contributed. Following the nomination process, a committee has sat down and all the nominated candidates have been based on the following criteria. There must be a solid track record of excellence. There must be a demonstration of ethical leadership, which is key in South Africa today, commitment to developing others, and significant achievement or impact in the last 18 months. And it is an honor for AWCA to recognize those recipients today. It is always an honor and privilege to celebrate our own. We need to celebrate each other's success. It might not be on these platforms, but let's do it even in our workplace. Celebrate your manager who's doing well. Celebrate your friend who is doing well. Let's help sisters grow up, to continue to do what they're doing well. Through our Celebrate Success at AWCA events, we have always made it our duty to celebrate exceptional business leaders in South Africa, and whether it be a male or female, and whether they are CAs or not. However, these awards today are focused specifically on Black women chartered accountants. And today I say to the 2020 AWCA Recognition Award winners, we say to you, congratulations, Mbokoto, for consistently raising the bar in all that you are doing. And we know that you have had to break through some time, you had to break through some tough and difficult high barriers to be where you are and to achieve all that you have. We do celebrate you and for being a trailblazer and a leader. And we say to you, keep shining and be an inspiration to all of us who are in this room. Our first recipient, the first AWCA Recognition Award will go to the Audit Partner for the Year. And the drum roll must come, even if it's for 5 minutes. There's no, I think virtual things really, there's a challenge, but we learn. I'll have my own drum roll. But this award goes to an exceptional woman who hails from Pietermaritzburg. Let me make sure that I'm reading the right document. The Sleepy Hollow in KZN. Her personal and professional journey has been anything but sleepy. Her career at KPMG, I'm sure you already know where I'm going, has taken her to leadership role globally at Luxembourg and London, specializing in financial services sector. And she is a true embodiment of excellence, having been appointed as a partner at the tender age of only 28 years old. 28 and she was a partner. Her area of expertise includes retail banking, corporate treasury, and securities trading and asset-based securitization structures. Her experience also extends to regulatory reporting for clients who are registered with the financial service professional bodies regarding the Financial Service Conduct Authority, a national credit regulator, and South African Reserve Bank. I will not read her whole profile, but she's exceptional. Once I announce the name, we can all go into the internet also to find out more. Her recent appointment at the KPMG Executive Committee is a testament of her innate leadership ability. This follows her tenure as a board member where she chaired the firm's Transformation Oversight Committee, a body that is aimed at progressing KPMG's strategic transformation objectives at a policy level. This woman trailblazer has proven herself to be one of the biggest supporters of leadership development, having invested herself significantly in various internal and external mentorship programs aimed at grooming Black chartered accountants. I'm sure you know who she is. Her advice to other women today is that, especially those navigating the professional journey, is that self-belief is powerful. Believe that you can do it. Integrity must be your foundation. And this is my personal favorite. Do what is right, especially when no one is watching. Understand your purpose and what you are trying to achieve, which is the bigger picture. She says that we must mentor others and help them rise up. Share the lessons that you have learned through your journey, especially your mistakes, and recognize others when they do well and openly acknowledge them. And the audit partner and executive director, and the AWCA Audit Partner of the Year for 2020 is the audit partner and an executive director at KPMG South Africa, which is Jolene Pierce. I will do the drum roll and clap hands. Congratulations to you, Jolene Pierce. And we celebrate your success and we say well done to you. Virtually, I know you are grateful, and I am not sure if there is time for Jolene to say a few words. I see the online system is also behaving and turning to other things. But we do congratulate you, Jolene. We say continue to do the great work, and the congratulatory messages, please keep the congratulatory messages coming in the Q&A platform. We do congratulate you, keep shining, and we're looking forward to many other 28-year-olds and 26-year-olds who are going to take up partnerships, because we have seen that you can do it and continue to shine and impact South Africa. Our second award goes to is to the AWCA Tax Partner of the Year for 2020. And this award will go to I call them young, it's young at heart because they're still working hard, to a young woman who is a powerhouse and was admitted into KPMG partnership in 2010 and has been the managing partner of KPMG Cape Town Tax Department since 2019. Her role entails strategic leadership and navigating the challenges of a very competitive market in the most difficult economic environment of our country, and has seen in the past years that she has written various tax-related articles and does provide comments on our national budget proposals. During her time as a partner at KPMG, she has truly demonstrated great leadership skills and is well respected for her adherence to the highest ethical values. Her ability to sponsor, to mentor, and to promote others throughout KPMG over her tenure as a partner is a true testament of her embodiment of lifting as you rise. She ain't going high alone. She's taking us along with her. Having grown up on the Cape Flats, she feels that it is important for everyone not to forget where they come from, critical, and to pave the way for future generations. She believes that we have a duty to assist mankind when we are in the position to do so. And the AWCA Tax Partner of the Year for 2020 goes to the Managing Partner of KPMG's Cape Town Tax Department, and that her name is Zora de Villiers. We congratulate you, ma'am. A round of applause to you, and we thank you and we congratulate you for this achievement, and we are looking up and we're looking at you and we're saying it is possible for all the other young women and young female in South Africa to achieve the greatness that you have achieved. We continue to send the congratulatory messages in our Q&A, and one day we will be handing over these awards to you and congratulate you in person. Thank you very much. We'll hand over to Hlengiwe to continue our discussion to move from economy to now talk to education.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the awardees. Congratulations, ladies, for all the wonderful work that you do in your spaces. And thank you very much, Paul. So now we move on to our second panel discussion where we look at education. As you've heard from Phumzile, you've also heard from Dr. Vuyo about education and what we need to do going forward. Also, Zulu did touch on it a bit, where we're talking about governance issues and maybe root cause issues for certain governance issues, where education imbalances could possibly be the reasons why we are where we are. With that said, COVID has shown us that, you know, there are some shortcomings and you know, issues that our education system is obviously experiencing, with infrastructure challenges, access to education, which makes this a very, very critical conversation to have for us to build a solid foundation. In this discussion, we're not only limited to discussing education of the accountancy profession, but for females at the helm of innovation and pioneering, a passion for education at all levels are invited today for them to share their insights on the role that women can play in leading for the future and equipping us with the skills for all of us to drive in the future that we are imagining or reimagining. So in my panel today, I have Mabato Mokiti. Mabato is a mathematician who's turned impact entrepreneurship with a passion for education and youth development. She started a career as an entrepreneur at the early age of 20, where she started a tutoring company, mathematicians, while studying at the university towards her BSc in mathematics. Okay, but soon after that, she realized that she wanted to serve the disadvantaged schools and communities, which is when she decided to approach corporate SA to design CSIs that will talk to the strategies in bringing quality STEM education in rural disadvantaged schools. Okay, with the growth of the mathematician and recently acquiring a postgraduate qualification in monitoring and evaluation, Mabatho has moved into a monitoring, into a client like, she's got clients like Telkom Foundation, MMI Foundation, Sanlam Foundation, just to name a few. She has achieved several awards and accolades, including being recognized as one of the Mail and Guardian top 200 young South Africans in 2013 for her work and contribution in the education industry. She also was awarded the World Economic Forum Global Shaper and was recognized to be one of the most 100 influential young people in South Africa in 2016 by Avance Media. In 2014, Mabatho was chosen to be one of the Mandela Washington Fellowship Young African Leaders Initiative, formerly called as YALI, a flagship program of former President of the USA, Barack Obama. She's obviously not alone, otherwise we would not be a panel. We are also joined by Kumeshni Wurst, who is the Director of Executive Education at the University of Cape Town, in the Graduate School of Business, where she leads a passionate team that delivers excellence to clients attending short courses and customized courses. She works very closely with clients, alumni, and the Faculty of Business Development team to develop relevant management and leadership courses that respond to the emerging needs of today's leaders. That will be very much exciting to find out more about that. Her excellent relationship management skills have helped the school secure 75% return business year on year. Kumeshni also holds an MBA from the UCT Graduate School of Business and is passionate about playing a role in ensuring that the school continues to deliver excellent results. Prior to joining UCT, she had worked for 7 years as an occupational therapist in the area of neurology and orthopedics at various hospitals in KZN and in the Western Cape. And finally, in my panel, I have Uboniswa Matigizela, who is a chartered accountant that has worked in various environments, including corporate investment banking. Boniswa is a senior lecturer at UJ in the Department of Accountancy, and she's passionate about financial literacy and education. Boniswa also serves as the UJ's management committee responsible for academic innovation and benchmarking. She's also she also has director experiences as a non-executive director of Ellen Gray nominee, the University of Johannesburg's Pension Fund, and an audit committee member of Ellen Gray Property Limited. In her passion made visible, Boniswa gave a TED Talk in 2019 September on how to overcome the myths of financial wellness. Ladies, good morning and welcome again.
Good morning, KDOA. Thank you so much for having us, and hello to everybody else out there.
Hi, awesome, lovely to see you this morning as we tackle a very touchy topic of education at this point in time. Mabatho, as we can see, and as mentioned by our previous speakers, the pandemic has forcefully pushed us into accepting 4IR and taking advantage, or rather embracing the fact that, you know, there's no other way of operating right now, but we find ourselves in virtual conferences. And partially that could mean in the future, we really need thinkers than doers. However, in the education system, or what we've seen is that, you know, there's far less people taking up mathematics or wanting to do mathematics even at a school level because obviously of certain reasons that they may have towards mathematics. But from your view, could you please just paint it for us as we go ahead and start reimagining what education would be like in the future, where we are as far as that is concerned?
Morning, everyone, and thanks for having me on the panel. Morning to all my fellow panelists. I think what the pandemic's really done is the 4RR was always imagined as something in the future, something that was still going to come, right? And what it's done is it's pushed the 4RR to the present. And now people have had to wake up because they realize that the 4RR is not in the future, it's today, right? But unfortunately, what it's also shown is that it's also shown all the flaws in our education system, unfortunately, and how blended learning was supposed to be something that was supposed to really be implemented years ago. And I know the education has been talking about it for so long, but never got around to implementing blended learning. And here we are, we're stuck in the pandemic. There's huge differences between private and public education, and now we're thinking of blended learning, but it takes time and planning to implement blended learning. So what it's really shown in the pandemic more than anything is just a sad reality of South Africa's education system, and how there's a huge difference between rich and poor, and really how it's really shown that money which education is supposed to be free, but now the pandemic's shown that money can actually give you access to education, and that's not the way it's supposed to be, right? And it's a sad reality of what's happened, but I think it also has given a lot of people opportunities to start thinking of how can we then counterpart for what's happening at the moment. Yes, we can still implement blended learning, but how can we do it in ways where we make sure that children in rural areas and townships still get behind, right? And have access to education. And I think also, I've had a conversation the other day, and a lot of people said, oh, now that we are doing a lot of digital learning, I'm sure maths and science is very important. I think more than anything else, what people need to realize is that the pandemic is not a sole focus on STEM education. It's just a focus on education as a whole. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to excel if you are going in a maths route. It really just highlights that, if anything, whatever you are planning on doing, whether in education in particular, you just really need to start implementing some sort of digital education into our entire education system. So rather than solely focusing on STEM education, what this has done is that it's shown the government that digital education as a whole needs to be implemented in all learning spheres.
Definitely. Oh my goodness, this is exciting. The future is very exciting. Thank you very much, Mabatho, for that. And I think pulling that in and over to you, Moniswa. As the higher education, or in the higher education space, of course, you know, they come into your space eager and excited about their careers, to start their journeys, but the pandemic has hit, and we need to be thinking about the future and how we move forward. And that may need a little bit of, you know, innovation and with your work that you've done and benchmarking and understanding all of that, can you kindly share with us the higher education space? Where are we? How are we imagining? How do we move forward? We want to come with you as women. Take us with.
Thank you, Hlengiwe, and hello to my fellow panelists. Hlengiwe, you know what, let's be honest that when it comes to education, it's a very multipolar challenge.
Yeah.
It is not one-dimensional. And also the view is that from different perspectives, people have different contexts to what something means.
Yes.
As you are aware, the University of Johannesburg is an open access university, meaning that opportunity is given a lot to students that wouldn't necessarily be maybe accepted to your Ivy League, if I should call them that, university. So that majority of our students come from quintile 1 and quintile 2 communities, and quintile 1 meaning that is the poorest community to come to us. So therefore, if I can touch on innovation, it therefore means, or should I say, the way that we have gone and tried to interpret it as a Department of Accounting is that we need to be aware that education needs to be more holistic than what we know it to be.
Yes.
And reality is that education, or the education system, has focused on the intelligence quotients rather than the emotional and the spiritual. So, and the reality is that in our country, not majority of us do not come from a background where your parents would sit you on the table and teach you the economics of life. So a lot of our learning in reality comes from outside the classroom. It comes from what we engage in on a daily basis. It comes from the behaviors that we learn and we see from our parents, from our families, from, the wider community at large. So therefore, within the Department of Accounting, yes, we are proud that we provide accounting related degrees, all right? And funny enough, and as we know, being an accountant, a chartered accountant, you are seen to be very, very money savvy, And like this idea because it also brings in the pandemic side of things, because a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people have been living from hand to mouth. So now innovation comes and says, how can we view education to actually include elements that say we need to see certain skills to be critical life skills?
Yeah.
Because we are told that education, not really told, but the focus has always been that education is about career, it's about money. But it's so much more than that. It is about falling in love. Let's be honest. It is about following your passions. It's about self-actualization to be the best that you can. So yes, we are at university. It is a beautiful opportunity to better yourself and all of that. But as educators, we are now seeing the responsibility that we have towards those students that come to our campuses, let's say for an average of 4 years. So the question becomes, over and above what I teach in the classroom, which feeds the IQ, what can we integrate into that curriculum that will now also change or give a different narrative to what education is about? So the way that we see it is that we've got 4 years that can create a positive impact, infuse something slightly different to what is IQ, and obviously being an accountant, let's be honest, we love money, we want to be successful and have lots of it. But the reality is that our academic programs, or should I say accounting one in particular, focuses on what my research revealed to be organizational financial literacy. So meaning that I learned a lot about financial literacy, but for the purposes of applying that to the organization that I will work for in the future. So I've learned all these years, but why is it that financial literacy and education, why can't I apply it in my personal life? And that's where now the innovation and benchmarking is coming in to say, how are we creating skills that will ensure that you're not only successful in your professional career, life journey as a whole? Because through that, and in particular with the type of students that we have, if that individual gets the opportunity, it's almost like we are catching them. Those 4 years, some of the stuff that they were not able to learn from home, we still, it's an engagement period, those 4 years to say, let's add some life skills And I guess for me, my passion is that whole thing to say financial literacy needs to be viewed as the critical life skill that will allow the individual to succeed, but it will be paid forward to the communities around and to South Africa as a whole. So everybody benefiting. And now in the pandemic that we are on, and you are finding that people are now reflecting a lot to say, what are my belief systems? Who am I? I thought having a job meant that
I'm successful.
You know, but you're now seeing that, guess what? You've got chartered accountants that don't have jobs.
If I didn't have an emergency fund that could fund me for 12 months, I'm in trouble.
You know, such things. But now, what happened to all those lessons you learned? Why can't you apply them? So all I'm just saying is that that's how we have chosen to be innovative and benchmark what we're saying we're offering to actually add to the whole life journey of an individual to become successful in themselves. That will then play on to the communities that they surround.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Boniswa. And I think it is also very relevant, not necessarily only for the accounting profession, but all other professions, you know, to release to industry and all industries, all-rounded professionals that can manage themselves in whatever space that they go into, can thrive and move the spaces they're in forward, and actually have an impactful contribution, whether as women or as men. Kumeshni, just to maybe bring you in also to our conversation, we don't want to leave you out. In your space as someone in executive leadership learning, what have you seen, or where are we, or what do we need to reimagine for us to see a future where all professionals, or generally professionals, are embracing what we normally call lifelong learning, so that, you know, we remain relevant, that, you know, the pandemic has taught us that you can be unemployed with your qualifications. So how do you ensure agility and flexibility so that you're resilient in any space that you are in?
Thanks, Shlingu, and good morning to my panelists as well. It's been amazing listening to both of you. So yes, absolutely. You know, I want to tag on to what Mabatu said about, you know, 4IR has been on, you know, the tip of our tongues. We've all been talking about it. Organizations have been preparing from years ago. They're saying, you know, adapt, we need to reskill, we need to rethink our digital transformation strategies. But there's been a lag over the last few years because they're saying, it's out there, you know, we'll get it. You know, I think what's happened with our Presidential Commission for 4IR has actually catalyzed the conversation in South Africa around, you know, the possibilities of adopting new technology for in our organizations, and what that could do for our economy, what that could do for employment of the people of South Africa. And something like 1 million jobs could be created. Now, I mean, if we just think about that, that's significant when you're looking at, you know, last year it was 27.1% of unemployment in this country. With the pandemic, I shudder to think what the stats are right now, you know, of more and more people unemployed. So, you know, we all knew that, you know, this 4IR is going to cause disruption, discomfort, adjustment. And the pandemic has actually just thrust us 5 years into the future, or, you know, in the last 6 months. And all organizations are having to rethink their digital transformation strategy like now. As we are walking the path, we are creating it. And it is a very scary space. You know, and from an executive education perspective, you know, the market globally has been disrupted. It has been impacted by the pandemic, not only because we've lost business. And that's for any organization. You know, when I talk about organizations, I'm always, you know, having to look outside and look at what are we doing to be relevant to help organizations continue to be relevant from an upskill perspective, from a leadership and management skill perspective. And right now, in the last few months, I have hustled like you can't imagine, because I've had to really think about what are we doing as a business school to stay alive, to stay on top of our game. So it's fundamentally shifted the way we are thinking about creating lifelong learning opportunities for individuals and for ourselves. I've had to reskill an entire team of people to be ready and agile and flexible and being able to deliver excellence in an online format, in a blended format. Forget blended.
True.
Blended is not even existent right now. It's all pretty much using emergency remote teaching. That's what we are doing. But interestingly for me, Shilengile, the conversations have shifted fundamentally over the last few months as to what organizations need right now. We've seen an increase in the need for digital transformation conversations. So we are doing a lot of consulting with companies. We have launched an online digital transformation strategy course, which it was actually fortuitous that we had designed it last year already, and it was already going to launch in April this year. We have seen numbers skyrocket on programs like that. Other organizations are grappling with right now is, how do I lead and manage a team remotely, virtually? How do I communicate with my team? How do I collaborate? How do I do collaboration, cohesion? How do we still deliver to our clients? And then also, when you think about it, I mean, all of us on this, as panelists and contributing to this conversation, over the last few months, our whole buying strategy has changed.
Completely.
Our whole interaction strategy has changed, not just professionally, but socially, so businesses have had to pivot so much to think about, how do I deliver to my client amidst this pandemic? How do I stay relevant? How do I keep my people employed? But to keep people employed, you need to make sure that you can support them. You can give them what they need right now, because it's not just, we're not just talking about making money here. We are talking about keeping people engaged. We are talking about mental health issues. We are talking about structural, systemic changes. And I want to just end with one key thing, is that when we pivoted to this emergency remote teaching, we had to look, I mean, in a business school, we're talking about people that can really afford premium products in the education sector, right? And that's only 1% of our
population or professionals.
So you're looking at people that have laptops, that have Wi-Fi, that have connectivity. But when you think at the larger education sector, it's not the case. Even with, even though our students can afford to have access, at the broader university level, there are students that don't have laptops. There are students that are sitting in communities that don't have access to Wi-Fi, bandwidth problems. So as an organization, as an educational organization, we've had to really think about, who do we partner with to give our students access? So we
collaboration again.
You have to collaborate. So we're collaborating with the Vodacoms, the MTNs, Cell Cs of this world, and saying, how can you come to the party to help us?
Ensure we deliver. So
this pandemic has really, really put the spotlight on digital inequality in our country. It's made it so visible that you cannot ignore it anymore. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner. If we had all the time in the world, we'll have this discussion the whole day. Because it's so important for us to talk about it and actually ensure that, we've got this conversation touching as many people as possible, and ensuring we start thinking about these things, we start looking into and introspecting how our children are being educated, what access they get, and whether our communities are also accessing as much as we would like to see. And thank you very much on that point of collaboration, because I see that some of the questions from our audience is talking about how do we move people in a situation where you've got someone in a rural area that doesn't have access to a laptop, access to a network, or even a device, where you then collaborate with the other providers, the service providers, to say, okay, how can we work together to ensure that we save the year, we save the time that has been lost, and also try forge forward as we reimagine the future. Okay, thank you very much. We've got a few questions from our audience. So we've got Guguletu Maisela asking, how can education better integrate the focus of contributing towards the improvement of society and not just pursuit of personal success? How can education be reframed in this context? Okay, so I know, Boniswa, you did touch on a bit on personal, or rather individual, upskilling or success financially for people in the individual space, and eventually tapping onto the community they're surrounded by. Do you want to maybe share a little more on
Yes.
that, Boniswa?
Thank you very much. Thank you. In reality, what's important, you know how we always say leadership from the top?
Yes.
Because now, in the ground level, we can say, this is what I'm committed to, and so and so and so forth. But if you are not a chief and you're just an Indian, excuse my choice of words, it's very hard to make any difference. So for me, my belief in answering the question that has been posed is that we need to have the kind of leadership that is conscious, that is mindful and very deliberate in terms of what, how, and why. Because if you don't have those three, then it's almost like you're going back to self-preservation. You're only focused on benefiting yourself. So I believe very highly that in order to be able to make those visible changes, is that there has to be a specific guide to say, in terms of leadership, who is sitting there that will drive that? Because if we're being honest, most people tend to follow the leader.
Yes.
So the leader is not passionate about empowerment, is not passionate about recreating an environment that will be conducive to foster that which we want to see in our communities, then it's pointless. So for me, it's a matter of, young people like us,
yes,
courageous enough to take those positions of leadership.
Yeah.
And once we are in those positions of leadership, to be very deliberate to say exactly what am I doing, why am I doing it, and how am I going to do it? But being very mindful that you are changing the status quo. You are going against the grain. So meaning that you'll be getting a lot of resistance.
Pushback, yeah.
And therefore that's why such things they cannot be short-term goals.
Yeah.
The lot that we are working on today, but it's for the benefit of my daughter. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's how I feel we can provide or create a shift in the movement, is to be very visionary and very clear to say, where are we going? What are you intending to do with that? But being mindful with the fact that you need to have thick skin.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Boniswa. Maybe in just Mabato?
I'd like to just add on to what Bonisa said, because that was actually quite a great point she made there.
Yes.
I think education system has focused so much on academics and has pushed away personal development, right? And I think, in my opinion, really, one of the things, Boniso touched on financial literacy, right? But in order for anyone to have any sort of relationship with money, for instance, they've got to first explore a relationship with themselves, right? Which is personal development. So I can't have a relationship with money or with anything if I don't know who I am, right? And because of the history of our country, a lot of our kids are not having these conversations called dining room conversations with their parents or with their family members, right? And so these conversations aren't coming up at home. And what will evidently happen with with people of color is that we will always be a step behind because we're not having these conversations. And that's where education needs to step in. Education needs to step in, and personal development needs to be made compulsory in our education system, because it's something that we've put aside and we think, oh, you know, somehow we
just gonna happen.
Miraculously know how to set goals, how to know who they are. But if no one's actually sat you down and said to you, what are your plans for your future? How do you
What is your goal?
plan on doing things? Then you don't know how to have those conversations. And in my opinion, I personally think like that's one thing that the basic education system should be looking at, and possibly even just scrapping out the rest of this year to focus on things like personal development, literacy, reading, writing. A 2018 report came out to say that grade 9 learners cannot read to understand. So how can we even move them to a digital learning when they can't read, they can't write, they can't add? And so I think so many times it's so easy to just like put a plaster over a wound, right? And not really address the wound and where it's coming from. And what this has done for me, I always say, you know, it's given a chance for basic education to step back and say, maybe we should focus on the things that we've been lagging on so many times, because we're always chasing to finish the curriculum, complete the curriculum, you know, pass the syllabus. We just start focusing on the basics, and that's what we should be doing, in fact.
Ladies, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, this has been such an awesome conversation. And you know, again, if we had all the time in the world, we'd go on and go on. And I feel like there's so much more that, you know, can still come out of all that you have to offer. However, we are so badly running out of time. And there is one question though that is burning for me. And maybe I'll start with Kumeshni. So the one question that people have, or one person has raised, which is Joy Hokwana, is what can an ordinary person right now do to assist with the education? Because Mabata was talking about, are we even asking our kids about setting goals? So as an individual, what do I do to help the situation? How do I do to help address what we're imagining as the education of the future? Kumeshni, do you want to chip in? 30 seconds, ladies, 30 seconds each, please.
Start the clock. So I think using yourself, understanding what's happening in your own home first. Where are the gaps right now in your own home for your children's accessing education? Look around you in your community. There might be people that need a cell phone, that need a laptop, that need access. If you can actually do that with 2, 3, 5 people, you are already making a difference. So do that, start there. Educate yourself, empower yourself with the knowledge so that you can actually help others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kumeshni. Well done on sticking to the 30 seconds. Bonisa, do you want to go?
For me personally, what I feel is very important is we need to be careful how we speak to ourselves, because kids learn from what you do and not what you say.
Yes.
So that for me is very, very powerful as a start, because you are a living example, a blueprint for the kids that you are raising. So starting by learning how to speak to yourself, therefore allows you to now start seeing it. So as an ordinary person, starting with self, and then you'll be operating from a place of kindness, because you'll be able to help others and say, you know what, I am investing in a version of myself, an earlier version of myself. And that's how we can continue.
And I'm sure, Bonisa, when we refer to our children, it's not necessarily our biological ones, but any child or younger person around you or even in your space would really benefit from that.
100%.
Yes. Mabata, do you want to get your 30 seconds before I say goodbye, ladies?
Yes, I think just on the topic of reimagining education, right? And the 4IR, because I see a lot of questions popping up about how can we introduce a 4IR. You know, it's in the most simplest of ways, and it's really about going back to basics. As I said, radio and TV are the most basic mediums that everyone has access to in rural areas, in disadvantaged areas, in suburban areas. And so it's really about how do we start using those two mediums as a way of education, because not everyone will be able to access, will get devices in the short space of time, right? It's impossible. Let's just, corporate South Africa can try, but there's only so much they can do. But how do we go back to the drawing board and go back to basics? You know, we all grew up listening to education platforms on radio or watching them on TV. And so how can we start using TV and radio as a medium to better our education system and not just to view television entertainment? Because we can bring in edutainment into this. And so
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Very, very rich. And you know, we obviously reimagining a universal education system here where, you know, we able to all access and take full benefit of while we lead for the future. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been a very enriching experience, conversation. It was lovely to get to know you. And thanks again. And you have a wonderful morning. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, ladies. So we are going to move to the second reveal of our award recognitions for the women that have made significant contributions in the industry. So at the moment, I'm going to be revealing the AWCA Trailblazer in Academia for 2020. This lady is a truly rare gem. She's extremely passionate about education and believes that education is the key to opportunities. She has taken it upon herself to find solutions that will improve the quality of education for accounting students and to market the chartered accountancy profession to African children. She left the corporate environment in 2012 and joined the University of Zululand. The purpose of this change was to ensure that the BCom accounting degree at the university gets accredited by our professional body, the AWCA Institute. To visit as many schools as possible to market the profession and also give motivation for the young ones. The accreditation of the university's program or degree was successfully achieved in 2017. Well done, lady. She has held the position of head of department at the University of Zululand between 2014 and 2019. I wish she was in UKZN. Amongst her many achievements, her key highlight during her tenure as HOD was getting the AWCA, CHA, and SAQA accreditation. She has held and continues to hold various non-executive directorships, including being the board of the AWCA, aren't we happy, since 2005 to 2007, and sitting on the AWCA board from 2008 to 2016. Her involvement as a board member of Moses Kotane Institute has enabled her to be part of the Oceans Economy Program, which seeks to create employment in the maritime sector. She is passionate about upliftment of her community and other young people and has participated in numerous school visits, AWCA camps, and career expos. She says that the advantage that she has with the students is that she can relate to their stories, having grown up poor in a shack in a single-headed household. This Mbogodo truly gives hope to the many young people, aspiring Black youth who are trying to gain entry into the profession, a true ambassador and inspiration to our upcoming talent within the profession. And the AWCA Trailblazer in Academia 2020 goes to, do I hear drum roll? Senior lecturer at the University of Zululand, Siphelele Homo. Congratulations, Pelele, on your recognition award and the participation that you have done with our youth. We really appreciate all the efforts that you do out in the community. My second reveal for the morning would be a AWCA CFO of the Year for 2020. This powerhouse serves as the Chief Financial Officer of the University of Johannesburg, a role she has held since 2018 in May. Some of her key achievements since joining the university has been strengthening governance across the institution and establishing the Missing Middle Fund, which has generated a significant amount of funds to assist students with bursary funding and ensure sustainable financial stability for the institution. Prior to joining UJ, she was a senior manager at the Auditor General for a period of 7 years, where she served as an engagement manager of audits for various national departments and related entities. She serves as a product champion and also serves as a training officer responsible for quality control and technical training for staff in her business unit. It was in this role that she got involved with the university sector through the audit of the National Department of Higher Education and Training. She initiated and successfully completed the alignment of auditing and financial framework or financial reporting for public higher education institution to the Public Audit Act requirements. This involvement extensively engaged, this extensive engagement with the vice chancellors and principals of the institutions, National Department of Higher Education, and internal and external auditors in the sector, developing and providing guidance to the auditors in an effort to promote reporting that enables and improves accountability by the institutions. And the AWCA CFO of the Year and the non-private sector category is, are you ready? University of Johannesburg CFO Nolwazi Mamarela. Congratulations, Nolwazi. Well done on all the work that you have done in the public sector. We really appreciate all the efforts that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great morning, but for now, I will hand over to Mpho, who will be taking us through our panel discussion in the social matters. Over to you, Mpho.
Thank you, Hlengiwe, and thank you and congratulations to all the winners, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing on education and on economy. Now we're getting into a session on the social landscape that we dream of. This is a very touchy, for me, very close to my heart. I get very emotional when I start talking about the social landscape and thinking about where South Africa and the world and Africa as a whole could be. And I'm going to use some stats just to contextualize before we get into the discussion and we get into our panelists. We've got an exciting panel that will unpack this for us. Our topic is reimagining the social landscape in South Africa. And I head up an organization that is Energy and Water, CETA, and on a day-to-day basis, we see the challenges that we face as South Africa socially. And I'm going to give you some stats just to contextualize. And it's going to be the death rate that we have in the world. Today, there are about 186,000 mothers who have died this year during birth. And the reason I'm highlighting these is because our social landscape is not only talking to, when we talk about a South Africa and a better life for everyone, we're not talking to qualifications and women taking up positions, but it's women who are changing the landscape and the structures within the country, within Africa, and in the world. Just the number of children who have died, who are under 5 years, it's 4,500,000 children this year have died under 5 years. When we look at the deaths caused by hunger today only, 14,000 people have died from hunger today. When we look at death caused by water-related issues, we have about 500,000 people who have already died this year. And I'm bringing this up just to contextualize the real issues that our country faces, the real issues that the world faces. Apologies, I've been teary just looking at the stats. I always get updates for myself to remind myself where I operate. And today we are going to talk about reimagining the social landscape of South Africa. And before we do that, we have a privilege of dreaming, because the fact that we can reimagine means that we have the privilege to dream of what we want. And when we look at the number of, the number, I've been tearing on my side. I don't know what's going on. The emotional side of life is getting to me when I'm listening to the economy and the education and thinking of our social status. But we've got a dream as Africa, where we said we've got a 2063 agenda, the Africa we want. And the reason we've got that dream at the AU is because we've seen the Africa that we do not want, the Africa that we don't want to remain, We've got a 2030 National Development Plan that addresses a number of social issues in our country. We've got SDGs that talks to inequality, that talks to no poverty, that talks to access to water, that talks to access to energy. And right now, as we are sitting here, and we know there is a African and a South African child, a young girl specifically, who, I know I repeat the story every day, who still has, in the morning before she goes to school, has to collect wood, make fire, warm water, and get ready in order for her to bath and get ready to go to school and walk miles to reach that school. It happens in South Africa, not outside. It's not in Uganda, not in Burundi. It happens in South Africa. And our conversation today is, as we are reimagining the landscape within South Africa, what is that vision and how do we contribute to that vision? We've got an exciting panel that I will introduce now, and we've got Shamila Subramani, and we've got Cindy Koyana Mabaso, and we've got Josephine Tsele, who will assist us. And I'm taking this and really saying, ladies, let's get to work. We can't in the next 10 years still be talking the same thing. And in the next 30 years, in 2063, how do we contribute to the achievement of the 2063 agenda of the Africa that we want? First on our panel is Shamila Subramani, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer. I welcome you today and thank you for making time to spend with us today. Shamila is the Chief Sustainability Officer. She joined the JSE in 2007. She is responsible for advising the Executive Committee and Board of the JSE Limited on sustainability and the integration into strategy, with a focus on multiple stakeholders and global trends, looking at regulation, and she also looks at governance and competition. She is the immediate past chair of the World Federation of the Exchange Sustainability Working Group and a member of the strategy group of the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance. She represents the JSE on various industry advisory panels locally and does that globally, and it's related to sustainability and responsible investing and climate change. And as a sustainability specialist, she has inter alia been a key contributor to the JSE's research into climate change and the development of a green bond framework. Exciting stuff. She is a trustee of the WWF in South Africa and served on the board of directors as a non-executive director, and she is the board chairperson of Ubuntu Wilderness. Shamila completed her master's program in sustainability leadership at the University of Cambridge and holds a master's business administration from the University of Pretoria through Gibbs. And she is a recipient of I never know how to pronounce this, Shirning and Mention House Scholarship, and is a member of the IODSA. And we welcome you, Shamila, and it's important that we have people talking sustainability in the room so that we come up with solutions that are not just plaster, but are sustainable solutions for the issues that we face in our country. We welcome you, ma'am. Next, we have Messin Dikoyana Mabaso, who is known to the AWCA family. She is a chartered accountant, qualified at Deloitte. She's an entrepreneur, a corporate leader, and a champion for transformation and governance. And she is the founder of the executive chairperson of the African Women Chartered Accountants Investment Holding, and a woman-owned and led investment company. Previously, she has served as a non-executive director in private sector and in the public sector. And I know that if I start mentioning the number of companies she served on, we might finish after lockdown. So I will not go through those entities. She is a leader in the areas of finance, investment management, and business turnaround, and audit and risk management, and a number of areas also. She is the founder, member of AWCA, as I mentioned, and she has for AWCA's long-term financial sustainability, she has established the AWCA Investment Holding. She is positive about Africa's economy prospects and never hesitates to play the role of evangelist for entrepreneurship. This is the boldness that we've talked about earlier this morning. She is passionate about investing in people, and she was recently appointed as the chair of the Sugar Association of South Africa. So let's go consume sugar, ladies. She is a wife, a mother of two, a proud member of International Women's Forum, and a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. And we welcome you, Cindy, to the platform, and we are looking forward to your contribution. And next we have Madam Josephine Tsele. And Josephine Tsele has an extensive risk management experience. It's critical in the times that we are in to be looking at a risk, and we are probably becoming aware of our limited risk management approaches in our personal lives and in the organizations that we lead. So Josephine Tsele will bring in that element when we look at our social landscape, some of the risks that we face and we need to be managing. She has experience across multiple sectors and regions, and she has worked for the corporate and investment banking division of Standard Bank. She's worked for AWCA, she's worked for Netbank in senior roles that includes head of a country risk and the GM of a global financial institution and credit risk within a specialized finance, and also as a senior transactor and a senior executive in credit risk. She at Standard Bank Risk Department, Josephine had the primary responsibility for CIB's South African portfolio, including the Durban and Cape Town regional offices. And lately, as the executive risk assurance, she has the mandate to carve out operating structures and implement a fit-for-purpose global assurance model for CIB. Josephine has also chaired CIB credit committees and was a voting member of all the risk committees and of CIB South African EXCO. This is the exciting panel that we have, and we are going to tackle this, so reimagining our social landscape. And in this, I'm going to say, in all that we do, in all that we talk about, we are doing all this for the better life of every single South African citizen. And that discussion, we can redesign education. We are redesigning education because we want it to impact people's life. We're redesigning, we're looking at impacting economy because we want it to impact people's lives. And to the panelists, I'm just going to throw it to the ground and say, what is your vision in line with all the challenges that we see? What is your vision or your reimagined social landscape in South Africa? And I will start with Mesindi.
Thank you very much, Mpho. Morning, ladies and the gentlemen that are with us today. It is indeed a privilege to be part of this conference, which is one of the most impactful women conferences in our country. It was set very well in the morning, the scene around today, which is basically a call to action to us professional women, that whilst we know that the fight in the boardroom continues because it is not over. We can get into the stats around where that sits. But what is important is that we actually take this fight onto the ground, because there are real issues that we are facing as a country. And it is clear that we need to heighten the role of our community-based organizations. We now need to be visible at that level. We need to be visible at our grassroots level, as was indicated. And this is also one of the areas that the UN has overemphasized, that the community-based organizations are the one that will bring real action that is impactful in our society. Paul, you've touched on the Africa we want, our Vision 2063 as Africans. You've touched on Vision 2030. In fact, last Friday, we even received the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development guidelines to us as South Africans on recommendations on how to recover as a nation, both economically and socially. But I must say that in that is embedded some of the elements that we've been talking about already as a country. Minister of Finance tabled towards the end of last year the paper called Towards the Economic Strategy for South Africa. But we've got all these documents that are floating around. What is important now is to make sure that we coordinate them and collaborate and get onto the ground. So I would urge an AWCA to actually get a seat in this presidential working group, which is now supposedly planning for the economic recovery of our country and looking at all these elements. But personally, what I actually have thought of looking at all of this together is to summarize this into 6 elements, and we can find time later in the conversation to then unpack them. But I think the first one, it's clear that we need an inclusive South Africa, whilst we understand that we are a diversified nation. We require, number 2, social cohesion and equality. Thirdly, we've got the digital economy that we are talking about that's going to be very critical in a new South Africa. We need to harmonize that with the green economy, the skills economy, which is going to be very important in underpinning these new economies that we're talking about. And the previous panel on education indicated that the digital economy and all these pillars that are going to grow our economy are actually have to be underpinned by a very rigorous, skills investment. And in that third element, I throw in entrepreneurship. Fourthly, we do need bold and ethical leadership to take us forward as a country. Fifth is shared value. And lastly, and most importantly, and what I'm very passionate about, is conscious and purposeful living as South Africans. So, and Paul, you need to guide me here in terms of, time, because as I drill into each one of them and nudge me to move, when you want to move to the next one, on the inclusivity topic, our country is stuck, ladies. We need women, we need young people to lead our country now. I mean, we've listened to the stats around the 5 countries that are led by women and how they've responded during this time. And by the way, my favorite is Finland. When you look at those 4 ladies who lead the country, young, funky, and good looking. But on a serious note, the UN has even given us guidelines for these recovery plans. And I think key to these plans is that any recovery plan needs to have a gender lens and put women and girls at the center of it. Sub-Saharan Africa has about 74% of women are in informal employment, for example. That means that these women do not have access to what we call employee benefits, things like medical aid, paid sick and maternity leave, pensions, and so on. So as we recover, we need financial support systems and structures that also look into part-time and informal employment. And I think as companies move most of their employees to variable pay, yes, it will allow us as women to have more work-life balance. However, it comes with some of these realities in terms of our own social balance with the economic side of it, of things. And on social cohesion and equality, the dichotomy of COVID is that it was a great leveler because it hit us as humans irrespective of creed or color. But on the other hand, it was also a big, it laid bare the inequalities of our country, right? And so as a result, when we went into lockdown, we went into our homes. Some people didn't have homes to go to. Even those who had homes were in informal settlements where there was no energy and probably, no proper sanitization. Some children have not gone into school, have not been able to access any schooling, when some of us, our children, were able to switch into online, education immediately. So which is clear that the recovery really needs to be embedded in building that rural, economy and bringing it to the fore. And the food element, which hit us hard, where we went on lockdown with food, we stockpiled, but people on the ground could not even provide themselves with food. So as a country, we need to ignite agriculture. This is one area that became less attractive, but that is where we need to deal with our employment, because it will provide large amounts of employment, but also bring back subsistence farming that allows us to provide food for ourselves instead of also just depending on the food packages that were so kindly offered, by women in particular out there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Indy. Thanks a lot. That key point, the vision for a South Africa where there's social cohesion and equality. And I like the fact that you talked to the skills economy, which we often leave behind. We do all these other things and we import skills in and wonder why we still have such a high unemployment rate in South Africa. I'm going to move on to Mesha Mila. In line with the South Africa recovering, how do we ensure, what is that vision, the Reimagine South Africa from your perspective, that also ensures that it's sustainable solutions and not slapping people with food packages, with food parcels, with water tanks that aren't going to be long-term? How do we ensure sustainability in the solutions that South Africa is bringing across?
Thank you very much, Mpho, and very good day to everybody. It's an absolute privilege for me to be joining you today. I think that it's just so topical and relevant, and I felt it an absolute treat to listen to everybody who's spoken before me, and in some ways feel like they've kind of taken the words right out of my mouth. And I was particularly listening to Boniswa in the previous panel. I'm thinking, did she look at my notes? What does she have? But I think what it does reflect is that the same awakening has happened to so many of us and has brought to light those things that are really fundamentally going to change the future, because we've arrived at a point where we can see that what we've done up to now isn't working. And it has resulted in a number of inequalities, a number of issues, and predominantly we're seeing that's coming through in the social context as well as the environmental context. And when we look at that, I mean, just the pandemic itself, you can see is actually a consequence of an environmental emergency and has obviously translated into a social one and has laid bare the complete inequality that we see in many areas, but has also translated to an economic challenge. So if we think the way that we've pursued a growth model, for example, up to now is going to work into the future, we're sitting in the best example that we can have of why that hasn't worked. And that this pursuit of capitalism for capitalism's sake, the short-termism which is entrenched in everything we do, and the inequalities in which it's resulted is hopefully not something we want to take into a future that is worth having. So when it comes to the sustainability lens, I think you're probably going to think it a bit strange that I'm going to take a step back. And I'm going to say that if we need to reimagine the social context, my point of departure is going to be reimagining our value systems in their entirety. And that has been reflected in what a number of the panelists have said up to now. So if I think about the way in which we behave, the linear model that we pursue, which is really a take, make, waste model, and and very much based on consumerism, very much based on those things. Where has it landed us? If we look at the pursuit of profits in a very short-term way, it incentivizes behaviors that exacerbate inequalities. It incentivizes behaviors that, for example, we've seen manifest in a context like we have in the pandemic, where we started to hoard, where it's about me, what can I do, how do I self-preserve before I even think about what's happened. But that is something that has become ingrained in us. We're in a country, in a context that is actually plagued by historic inequalities. That is one where we're trying to just deal with that fracture, where we're trying to deal with inequality even at a psychological level. And that manifests in the way that we behave. We're going through this change. We're still very much a fledgling democracy in many ways. We're still trying to deal with these major inequalities. And then you slap these issues on us. And how do we deal with that? So in many ways, we're dealing with the worst branch of all of it. But hopefully what this can teach us is that fundamentally it's an opportunity to reimagine and rethink what we value. When you think about this, our value systems are born in everything that we're exposed to. And from the level of youth, it's going to be in the society that we're exposed to. It's going to be what we listen to our parents say. It's going to be what we watch on television. It's going to be what's advertised to us and how much and how deeply we imbibe that. That is going to translate into what we value. And that is going to translate into the kinds of leaders we are, and that value system will carry through. So when I take a step back, and the question that was posed is that how do you reimagine the social context and society and the role that is going to play? Mine is going to be the opportunity is now to fundamentally change that which we value. If we're going to value a completely materialistic view, the yardsticks that we use to measure success are rooted in how much I have, how big my house is, and how expensive my shoes are. That is really what we're going to continue to reward. And that is why we are in the situation we are in now. It is a massive ask, I think, globally for everybody to realize that we can't do that. We are living within the constraints of a planet that has boundaries. So if we bring in the planet, profit, people view, we are living within a planet that has boundaries. Within those boundaries, we need to deliver on social outcomes that will enable us just to have a decent standard of living, the many things that we aspire to, including social equity and the like, and a decent standard for most people, for everybody to be able to have, and basics that we can have access to. So if we rethink that value system, it's going to be, can we provide that, which is in the words of Kate Rowe within the donut model, achieve those social outcomes within the context of planetary boundaries, because exceeding those boundaries results in things that we can't even model, including what we're living in now, which is the pandemic, and just looking at this issue of zoonotic diseases and how we have diseases jumping from nature into humans because nature is being displaced, because nature is actually being encroached on by our activity in an unthinking way. So can we function in harmony with that planet and its boundaries, and ourselves prosper as well? So that is the heart of the sustainability thinking for me, but also fundamentally asks us to rethink our value system. Because if we continue with that value system, we will continue doing these things. We will continue drawing down on finite resources in a manner that believes that they're infinite, and it is careering at a breakneck speed towards the edge of a cliff. So unless we are willing to make that change in what we measure and what we treasure, and how we bring that to the floor, and how that actually makes us show up in our corporate jobs, in the decisions we take, in the leaders that we are nurturing in the next generation, then unfortunately, this future that we hope that we can create is not going to happen, because we're going to default to the behavior that we've been groomed in. We're going to default to the value system that we've been groomed in. And again, I reiterate, this is not an easy ask, because we're often coming from a situation where there has been massive deprivation. So what does one do? And I think that that challenge, as much as is not, is perhaps not what you might have expected to hear from me, having a background squarely rooted in finance and strategy and the like, is really what I think is fundamentally going to shift that. Added to that is going to be us taking leadership on models that start explicitly being able to price the context that we live in, being able to price the impact on society and on the environment. And it's absolutely amazing that my fellow panelists, in fact, are Josephine and Cindy, who are actually within the professions of accounting, of risk, and understanding what that means. And if we take a risk perspective, even if we look at the World Economic Forum, who puts out an annual risk report, the top risks in relation to that risk report, both in terms of outlook and in terms of likelihood for the next 10 years from a multi-stakeholder perspective, are actually all environmental in nature. There are some social risks that come in there, but again, we're not talking about things like, what you normally look at typically in an income statement and balance sheet. Is actually, these are the risks that we need to start looking at. And the reason these risks exist is because of the model that we've pursued up to now. So if we can start changing that and changing our mindset, we can start changing that outlook. And even the money that we try and invest now, the companies that we try and invest in now, are the ones that we want to use with a different lens, because we can be completely beholden to, when we open our pension fund statement, or we look at the quarterly report or the annual report and see what's your headlines earnings and what's happened to this, but we haven't understood what the impact of that has been on society. And we, as for example, participants in pension funds, look at that. We look at that and we say, I open my pension fund statement and all I want to look at is my growth being 10% to 20%. How many of us go back and say, how did that company behave in creating that return that I'm looking at? And in fact, is that return that I'm asking for really going to be what I want? And do I just want that money in the return sake? Or what I really want is to be able to retire into a society that's worth retiring into, that is not sitting with major issues and water crises, where in fact 50% of that money I'm probably going to have to spend in just getting water to drink, and where I'm sitting in massive issues in relation to security and criminal activity as a result of social inequity. So those are the kinds of things I think that we need to put front and center on changing the narrative in the social context. And that is very much rooted in how we think. And therefore, everything else that we do in relation to education, in relation to economics, and how we actually act and show up in our businesses is going to really be critical. So for me, that would be my opening thoughts on starting to reimagine this and bringing together so many of the critical points that all of the panelists have already mentioned.
Sure. That's that's a huge challenge. Like you said, it's a big ask, but it's the core, reimagining our value system. And from, I think, financial professionals, it might be, we used to debit and credit. And this is a totally different perspective, where we are not only going to be looking at the bottom line and in the positions that we take up, in the roles that we are going to be taking up as executive in the finance space, how do we have to start even changing the solid, and this is where we talk about the solid structures that have existed. And this, I'm going to link to the call in the morning. It requires bold women. It requires boldness. It requires not only saying I'm an executive and I sit on the board, but at that table, what am I bringing forth to change the value system? Sure, that's a lot of work that we have, but I trust that we will be able to do that as women. And Josephine, just link into that. I'm going to try to just bring you in the discussion with regards to when it comes to the risks. First of all, personal risk, I think career risk, I'm linking it to the conversation of changing a value system of being the only woman on the board, and you find males, an example, who have are building onto those structures because there's a profit line that is important. What are the risks, ma'am, that we face as a country and as women with regards to reimagining and stopping at imagination? Because we can dream all we can dream and just never getting to implement. So from your perspective, Josephine, if you could just share your vision with regards to the reimagine South Africa within the social space and some of those risks and the challenges that we would face as a country and as women in realizing that reimagined South Africa. If Josephine is still here. Josephine, you are on mute.
Yes,
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good afternoon. And to my fellow panelists, as well as the attendees in the conference. So, if I may start, I am an economist by training. Shamila, I'm not an accountant. I do work with accountants, so I'm in good company right now. So I've evolved into the numbers. So that's where I am. I love them dearly. And the other thing is that I am the Chief Risk Officer at the IDC at the moment. I think those two things didn't come out clearly. Sompo, you've given me a challenge, and I think listening to my former, to my panelist members, I was really inspired. I could already see and imagine those queues of the homeless, and the fear with the old people going to get their grants, the young mothers, I really could visualize that time. So the challenge that you've given to me, Mpo, is how to imagine our social landscape that would allow for inclusivity in leadership and decision-making, right? So this is a very big topic that you have asked. And I think people more qualified than I with research have probably attempted to answer it over many years. I will draw in answering it a report that has been done by Bain in terms of the gender disparity in South Africa, which I found useful. I certainly hope that by the time my 13-year-old daughter sits on any panel as esteemed as yours, Paul, that she would not be faced with dealing with a topic such as that, because it would have become redundant. This is my reimagination. Let me start off then by saying that our first democratic president, President Mandela, had a great vision for which importance I believe it has not changed. And the panel before us spoke about it. That is the importance of education in breaking down barriers of any kind, be it poverty, outsider treatment, mistreatment, all of them. So I subscribe to that. So recent stats, being accountants, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, say that 58% of pupils that enroll in public higher education in 2013 were females. We're talking about some 573,000 feet walking around in our universities. In 2016-17, VETS had more females, 844 of those were more than males. Durban University of Technology, 629, UCT, 290. So more females enrolling in these institutions than males. A 2016 survey by Stellenbosch indicated that females have a higher probability of graduating than their male counterparts. A similar trend has been found in the US, in the UK, as well as Australia. So to me, this says that females have demonstrated that we have a longer staying power than males. So the question is, what happens through our professional journey, through that professional journey? What opportunities exist once women graduate and have entered the workplace? Well, the Bain report indicates that the percentage of women in senior leadership roles had remained relatively flat in South Africa, increasing only slightly, 26% in 2004 to 28%, meaning the feed through of our graduates, of this female that I've just spoken to you about, is not making meaningful dent in representation. The story in Africa is similar. Only 29% of senior leadership positions are held by women. In South Africa in 2017, 31% of our companies had no female representative in senior leadership roles, and only 70% of board were executive directors. 10% of our CEOs are women in South Africa. And this falls catastrophically to 2.2% when we look at the JSE listed companies. So why is this? As women, there are many reasons that we know. As we sit here today, we can elevate, one reason over another. This is because as women, we are not a homogeneous group, and our differences include color, religion, sexual orientation, language, culture. You can add many nuances to our experiences. However, there are key and common themes that affect all of us, as the structural hurdles that Dr. Vuyo spoke about in the morning. We are affected by the unconscious biases that we encounter and that we have to contend with in the workplace, but also in society and in our communities. It is reported that in a sample of a group of employees that started off their careers at the same time, those who reached middle management, 11% more women felt less confident than their male counterparts in their ability to reach the top. This is because of factors such as non-availability of mentors and senior sponsors. The reality of organizational culture has been found to weigh heavier on us as females than they do on males. Female middle managers feel very excluded, as discussions are often on corridors, through social networks such as lunches, bike rides, golf. I know some of us ladies take part in these, but some of us don't. And this makes us as women feel disenfranchised and not a part of an organization. And our conscious meal can absolutely help us in breaking up this exclusion. There are, of course, challenges where, as women, we report waning family support as our career progresses because it requires more time. We are often forced to take very tough decisions in order to balance these family commitments and sometimes very serious consequences for our career. So, in conclusion then, to answer the question really on how to increase women participation in leadership and decision-making, I believe a key factor that will move us forward and in the acceptable way is the acceptance that gender equality enhances business performance. For me, this requires a strategic shift in the absolute requirement to ensure that both male and female leaders support the advancement of women throughout their organizations and see that diversity which women bring in the business is an imperative for business success and not just a nice to have. We are not happy and we're tired of people that are meeting targets and meeting these targets, but the environment for us is not changing for us to thrive, because the studies have shown it is not understood that it is a business imperative. It's just 80% of women say that they want us, women can come in, they can be leaders, and it's a good thing. But then when you start asking them from a business imperative perspective, that number goes down to 20%, which means we haven't made that transition to say business is the reason why we are there and we are adding value because we're different. So diversity is critical, and we can bring ourselves and not try to be men when we are around the table. So for me, that is very important. And particularly important for me is that the 28% of female leaders that I spoke about, small as it is, we need to be champions of this agenda, as I believe that our companies and our country demand no less of us. We are carrying excess leadership capacity of females in our country that is not being utilized, that is being wasted. Enough numbers are required to shift this train. And I must say that in the organization that I'm at the IDC, you would clearly see our contribution towards this push of females and building up this momentum such that we can indicate and be clear that this is a business imperative and that we can succeed. Thank you, Paul. I will leave there.
Thank you, ma'am. Women are not nice to have. We are not statistics for companies to achieve their scores, and we need to be champions of the agenda of empowerment and bring about that sort of change in their social spaces and bring about that a change in our value systems. And from a value system, I'm going to bring about a very sensitive, from a social perspective, a sensitive issue that it's prevalent, and we've been talking about it in South Africa. It's not the first year, which is gender-based violence. At this time, we find ourselves that we're trying to stay in the homes and protect ourselves from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have noted another pandemic, and as the president has said, we're silently and across the globe and in South Africa, it's destroying many lives, and not lives of only the victims, but the victims, which are the children in the homes also. And gender-based violence and domestic violence has been on the rise during lockdown, and this has left a number of women and children vulnerable and exposed. And we've seen a number of policies, we've seen a number of documentation, we see the police changing how this is treated. And I'm going to direct the question first to Mesindi, and to you, Shamila, from a perspective of values. What must be done to create a lasting change to protect our women and children? A lasting and a sustainable change to protect our women and our children in our country.
Yeah, thanks, Mpho. Yeah, the reimagined South Africa would also assist in dealing with this. I think to go a long way. When we mentioned the housing problem, where people had to get into their cramped environments, and the men, basically now you were locked in with someone that then becomes an enemy. So the truth is, we need the smart cities more than ever. We dream of the not just one smart city, but smart cities. The education issue we talk about, and Shamila touches on it. We are a country that came from a value of education. We always knew that was our way out, but we've actually turned ourselves upside down, where materialism has become the main thing. We've got a society where it is okay to buy 5 cars at a go and then post it for the whole country, which has got majority of people who do not have food to go to sleep for them to see and consummate. A health system that has fallen apart. So we look forward to those revamped health environments, a health system where, in all fairness, I think government needs to channel its limited resources into areas of national good, into areas that touch people on the ground, and improve the livelihood of people. I honestly would like to see the passion that is being put on reviving an SAA into a metro rail, for example, that transports our people on a daily basis to go to work and earn a living, right? And so those are some of the things that I honestly reimagine a much more inclusive transport system that creates a little of agitation. A nation that needs to heal. We were still a healing nation even before we went into COVID. But now some of the things that are touching us socially in our families is that there's a lot of healing that will still need to be done as we are losing our loved ones. So these things are actually touching on all of us, both men and women. But it is clear that there are certain fundamentals that are brought by how we are socialized, the upbringing in our homes, on how women respond to some of these challenges, where the woman ends up being the pillar of the home that puts things together, even in challenging times. So the bills we have seen go a long way. The facilities that are made available, for women who are battered, who are running away to because of gender-based violence, those go a long way. But they have to run parallel with the bottom-up work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in transforming the male figure in our society. Patriarchy needs to be uprooted, you know, and it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna take a whole lot of work. And again, this is where the community-based organizations, Ms. Phumzile touched on the fact that this year, 2020, we were going to be celebrating 25 years of the Beijing Declaration. There were 17,000 women who drafted the 277-page declaration. And we all know how groundbreaking that Beijing Declaration was. Back in the rural areas and the townships where I grew up, I could hear men fearing, saying, oh, by the way, kunale Beijing, because it actually, you know, it had such an impact. And in addition to those 17,000 women who drafted it, apparently there were 30,000 women in parallel structures in the communities that were also organized in Beijing around that time. So I think women and AWCA, the time for community-based organizations is now. So we need those churches, we need those stockfields where the woman feels empowered, because, and Paul, I'm not, you know, there's a lot of value that comes in how we then catch the problem down the line, you know, being able to have police force that is now being conscientized how to treat women when they run to you, instead of you taking them back and saying, no, go and sort this thing out with your husband. There is a lot of value, you know, with the bills, with how that must be dealt with. But I do believe that our churches in the communities, you know, the empowerment structures that we used to have are the ones that are going to rebuild that confidence of the woman in the home, such that we are not only availing support for you to report when it is done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in how we are bringing up our boys, in how we are bringing up our girls, and really that is where I see our work being cut out for professional organizations like us as AWCA, where we are now holding that woman in the school talks that we do, not just to talk about accounting, but where we are now elevating the conversations and the discussions around loving ourselves. The self-worth in women, you know, needs to be ingrained on a regular basis. And that is what is going to take more hard work, but it is work we need to get started now in earnest.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Shamila, your views on that?
Thank you so much, Mpho. So, I mean, you know, Cindy has covered pretty much everything I think that we can do. And so for me, additional to that in my mind in relation to some of the issues, I think is flipping it over a little bit potentially as well, and to look at the other side, and which is the value system that surrounds men. And what do they prize, and how is that linked to their sense of self-worth? Often, a lot of what is playing out in relation to gender-based violence is coming from a toxic masculinity. It's coming from a value system that says, I am powerful if I can do this and if I can do that. And in many ways, yes, we're talking about men in that regard and that value system that drives some of that. But in some ways, we're also talking about women and what makes us powerful, right? So it's rethinking that, I think, and having a conversation that actually really starts to unearth where that comes from and how that can be reimagined, to use the theme for our conference today, to create this which we want to do, which is ideally, you know, more equity between the genders and a value for different roles for the sake of that role, and not because it's performed by a man or a woman, for example. And so that for me is talking to this issue about how do we teach our children. I'm a mother of 2 boys. He was never destined for me to have a girl. So I'm sitting grappling with this issue where for me, the future is undoubtedly female. How am I going to bring up these 2 boys? And what am I going to teach them? And how are they going to contribute, and how are they going to survive in this world? And so when I think back, it's about unpacking that which underpins the psyche of men as well, and what drives how they see their value playing out. And if that value is very narrow within a sort of a patriarchal mindset, which is what Cindy has outlined as well, I mean, that is just going to be perpetuated regardless of just the systems that we might put in place to help women to cope. And we absolutely need to have those systems right now, because that alone has made a massive difference. We can go somewhere, something can be done. We have a way out, and we have a way out quickly. There's a system that sits underneath that, which is the justice system and the like. And we do know it takes a long time to see results in practice. You know, if for example, if you're an abused woman right now and you have to go through that court system, you're going to be reliving your issues a number of times. You're going to have people question whether it was your fault and that you invited that. You're going to be saying, oh, you know, those sorts of the issues that we need to deal with, but we need to deal with that again at a values level. What is informing the fact that that is our dominant narrative? What is informing that, and how can we change that? And how can we create a sense of worth for people, whether be they male or be they female, that is rooted in a different perspective that will help us to act differently and will help us to think differently. So I think for me, if we want to answer your question, having something that is a more sustainable change going forward, we absolutely need to do those things we're doing now, which is giving women at least some kind of support that allows us to be able to deal with these issues and get out quickly, for example, but also actually understanding what is the root cause of that in relation to this patriarchal society, which in many ways is changing quite quickly, but at the same time is still stuck in the past. And so I think the psyche is the thing that hasn't moved as fast as the dynamic is changing, for example, in relation to opportunities for women. And I want to perhaps reflect very quickly on something more in practice. I think many of the women or people that are watching our webinar today are probably professional in their context, already, you know, one could argue are empowered and are already empowered, definitely financially, to be able to make different choices. And that financial empowerment obviously is a critical part of being able to change this dynamic, because once you have a level of financial independence, you can start removing yourself from situations and making different choices that otherwise would have kept you bogged down. So that's the one change. But if I think about that, and let's think about how this plays out in practice. I don't know how true this is for other people on here, but if I look back at a number of cases of people that I've known, close friends, family members who have gone through divorces, for example, young professionals, mid-30s, 40s, often the retort from the women has been that it has resulted in emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse, for example. But what comes back to it is a notion of, he couldn't handle my success and he took that out on me in that way. So, and that's how the violence manifested. So this, he couldn't handle my success, is something that we need to think about as to where does that come from the male psyche? And how does it make you feel lesser than? Because you're measuring something that's making you act in a certain way. And that way is it's a very destructive thing. Is there a way to change that? Is there a way to create a value system and a way of thinking that removes us entirely from this, often what is a bit of a power struggle? So those would be some of my reflections on being able to change that in the longer term. And it does start with how we school our children and how we educate them and what value system we embed. But, you know, and that's great for that generation, but what does it mean for the rest of us already in the situation? And I think those are some of the things where, to Cindy's point as well, even community-based organizations would have a massive role to play, because these are not always conversations that are easy to have. And you need those thought influences that often form the base of that value system to help us to bring that change about.
Sure. You're touching on the community-based organization, which I'll go back to. There's comments that are coming from the attendees when it comes to not a lot of focus on the girl child and leaving the boy child behind. And I'm going to link it to the values also. You mentioned, I think, Cindy, that community-based organizations play a critical role. And I think often we take for granted the role that we as professionals can play in those community-based organizations. And I'm going to applaud women who are from professionals who are involved in these community-based organizations without even earning funds, but have put their hearts and their time in there. But the question from the panelists is that Petujo is asking that do you think as panelists that it's important and possible to also develop the boy child? And I'm linking it to the value system we're talking about. They think to the boy child, and to ensure that they are able to coexist and complement the girl child in this reimagined society that we seek to build. I'll pose that to you, Ms. Cindy, and I'll touch on and Major Josephine.
Right, thanks. And Paul, the reimagined South Africa, as we continuously say, today, is the one that, is inclusive, and the one that embraces, equality. So, which basically lends it to the to the question that is being raised. And I must say, I neglected touching on this earlier, because sometimes one wants to manage the level of detail in allowing other panelists to speak, but the issue of balancing our interventions cannot be underestimated, because I think naturally as human beings, and even how we navigate our lives, we are always driven by the rear view that says this didn't work. So when you are putting measures to correct, the pendulum always swings to the other end. So whether it's an issue of race or gender, I honestly believe that we have spoken about empowerment and transformation on the one side, on the inflicted, on the victim, as if the inflictor doesn't need to also undergo a process of transformation. In the workplace, we are going on sessions, we've got networks, we allow transformation, discussions, women discussions, generally which again, I say, have got a very important space where we are empowering ourselves. But it is equally critical to have that male voice. And I think at this stage, I must be honest, I commend my husband is part of a campaign that is, is dealing with gender-based violence, where they are coming up as professional women to speak up, tomorrow and be visible, because they believe that if they, and they are, by the way, now are the fathers of today, if they are not demonstrating to the younger boys that they are bringing up, that if they are silent and do not deal with this matter, we are basically leaving all of this only to the woman to deal with. So equally, as the point is raised, I fully agree with it. As much as we look for rights, it comes with responsibilities. So by saying we need equal transformation and equal attention to both, to the boy child and the girl child, it also is about expecting the same responsibility. At the same time, the education needs to be ingrained at our dinner tables and at the schools, and in those community-based organizations. Definitely.
Thank you. Any inputs from you, Josephine?
Sorry, Paul, just to add, the issue around women, and again, women, it's interesting because
so I can
such a powerful. Sorry, Josephine.
No, go ahead, Paul.
I don't know if you heard my question, Josephine, but I think Cindy was just gonna add on because your mic was off for some time there.
Yes. I had the question around the boy child, and I just wanted to add in terms of what Cindy has said. I also have a son, and I've seen, the comments that are coming through from, from participants, and in terms of the balance of, the girl and the boy child, and not ignoring the boy child, but also, I think the consciousness, the unemployment has really hit our men quite substantially. If you just have around the township, on a normal working day pre-COVID, what you see, people, men coming out, I think we need to ask ourselves in terms of what is doing to them, their self-esteem, and that we're leaving unattended as we are focusing on the girl child. So certainly on the boy child, we need to focus on them. It's very important. so that they are balanced out with the focus that we're putting on the girls?
I think the critical point you're raising there is the certain social ills are having ripple effect. Unemployment, where men are unemployed, is resulting in a whole lot of other challenges within the home, and within leading and even just raising boys when you're unemployed and your wife is the one who's the provider in the home. It affects that, and goes back to values. Have we valued men based on what they're providing in the home? And it requires really a drastic change in how we view ourselves as women, how we view our husbands and our partners, and how they view themselves, and that their worth and our worth is not in that material substance that we bring in the homes. And it's a lot of work that's going to be done. It's not going to be done in a day. I think the fact that we're talking about it, I believe that the women in this room are aware of it, and in our own homes, that's where the changes are starting, and then the communities change, and we take it to our community-based organization, and that's the ripple effect of the change that will come through. Ms. Cindy, you were commenting on, you were adding on to I think the last comment on the boy child.
Yes, I've also known, and this is a very controversial point, but again, if we don't address these things, we're not going to be a learning, nation. The whole thing around the men and women also hangs on the mothers of the home. We've spoken about women who are emerging, who are strong. And when when we see these women coming to our homes as the women, as the mothers, we are the ones that frown upon our children who are working together in a balanced manner. If the husband is going to also, offer, I mean, the JSE has actually come up with something great of saying men must also have paternity leave, and because what it also does, even if I know some of my friends were saying, but they'll just go and play golf. The truth of the matter is that it is almost bringing a conscientization that now that these structures are made available, it means you are expected to, right? So this is happening in the corporate, and whilst the corporate is the microcosm of society, back in the homes, we also need, there's a lot of work where slowly, some of us already have got daughters-in-laws, where we are encouraging this balanced view into life. The patriarchal thing really is hard work, because I still believe that as mothers, we are the ones that they'll frown upon when you see your son actually supporting, his wife, so to speak. So these are some of the things that also hang in our hands as women. We must not underestimate the power that we as women have in building the society.
Sure. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I'm going to ask a question that I'm finding. There was a comment actually, but I'll ask a question. It was related to a point you made, Josephine, with regards women being alone. I think the point was from Taryn, and it was saying that the point that you made on women feeling alone in the middle management is key. And I'm highlighting it because the reality is that when we can talk all these, when we are done here, we're going back to our workplaces where we might feel that loneliness. And the comment is that the system is structured not to be supportive, and there are mentors and coaches that are available for white males, and that networks are already designed to promote similarly. And we need to be intentional about creating women networks that promote and support each other. And there's been a number of comments with regards to us not being apologetic about having girls club, because men have boys clubs and they support each other. And I just wanted you to weigh in on how do we even, I think we women, how do we just support each other and not watch each other even drown, and establish these girls club that function. Not for pretty, I know I always say I'm making fun, not just pretty girls clubs, but girls clubs that are making us functional women.
No, I mean, the leadership of tomorrow the women such as yourselves that are coming and going to lead this country and are already leading this country need support. So as I said in my previous discussion, to say 28% of senior leaders is our responsibility already to ensure that the middle managers, the people that are coming up, and it's very lonely. We've been there. Everybody that is at the top has been in the middle. So we understand that space, and we understand how difficult it is to even come up to your female manager to say, I'm not coping. The system is established in such a way that you feel like you're not achieving. You feel like, there's so many things. Now, as women who have gone through that and we are conscious of it, what is it that we're doing to go down and make sure that you handhold this wonderful and very, very bright ladies to ensure that they go through that and then they themselves become mentors of others. And then it becomes a cycle. I think it's that consciousness that we don't become so busy that we sit in our offices or sit in our corners and we're not mentoring the middle managers. For me, I'm very passionate about that group of people because that's where we lose progress.
Sure. That's critical. Women in this room, middle managers, or whether you're starting as a manager, cry out to another Black woman who has made it. And I think maybe it's one of the issues that as a Black woman who's playing a senior role, you don't want to cry out to others because you might look like you are not adequate in executing that role. Let's cry out. It's not a secret that we are struggling. We're not the first people to struggle. Ask other women and they will hold our hands. And we will work towards that reimagined South Africa where we're not complaining about a child who doesn't have access to water. Because as professionals, we've put in place we've influenced policies, we've demolished structures, we have girls' clubs that are supporting each other so that there is good livelihood for everyone in the country. Thank you very much, panelists. I don't know if there are other questions. Ladies, we do apologize for the questions that we haven't answered. That time is not really on our side, but I think we've engaged from an economy and from education perspective, and from social perspective. These are highlights for us to take back. It doesn't end today. It doesn't end at 1 o'clock that we've talked, we've spoken. AWCA, we've been charged to go act. There's been a number of things that I've jotted down. We are asked to go work. And I know the Deputy President is here. I'm sure the President is here. Let's commit to respond back, even within the 3 years, on the progress on what AWCA is doing to impact the education space, to impact the economic space, whether it's through policy or just the work we do on a day-to-day basis, and the social change that we are seeing in the space of the reimagined South Africa. I like a comment that was made earlier by Zizipo. She said, reimagine South Africa. We want the future as today. We reimagine and we do as we imagine. And I just want to say, I feel privileged. I feel privileged that I have a right and I have an ability to dream. I talked about pre-1994. Some people might even have limitations when it comes to dreaming because they knew it was never going to happen. I'm privileged to dream and to work at my dream. And thank you very much, ladies. We're looking forward to a great South Africa that each and every single person in this room is going to contribute to that South Africa. And I will hand over to Bucha Hanise, who will take us through our final awards session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panelists.
Thank you, Mpho.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Mpho. So much homework that is left behind for the organization to take forward. Look, we are listening, we are jotting down the notes. We will definitely take up the call to continue with these discussions and actually make meaningful impact. Thank you so much, Mpho, and to the panelists. So I am tasked to give the Public Sector Leader of the Year award. So this lady is definitely, she is truly in a league of her own. She has more than 20 years of experience in both the private and public sector, spanning diverse areas, including auditing, consulting, corporate advisory, etc. Since 2014, she has served as the Deputy Auditor General and the CEO of the Office of the Auditor General of South Africa. the first woman to hold this executive position in the organization's history. A seasoned business leader with a wealth of corporate governance experience gained through participation on numerous corporate boards and strategic committees. She has served on the Presidential BEE Advisory Council to advise government on the implementation of the BEE Act and the policy. Sure. As the chairman of the CA Charter Council, she led the first BEE sector charter to be gazetted. Wow, what a nice profile. Her commitment to service excellence, ethical leadership, and contribution to the advancement of transformation was recognized and awarded at different times by the presidents of both the BMF and the AWCA. She is also no stranger to us as the AWCA, having supported the organization's initiatives on many occasions. This groundbreaking woman of note, a fellow and moderator of the African Leadership Initiative and the Aspen Global Leadership Network. Drum roll, please. I think you all know who I'm talking about, and the AWCA Public Sector Leader of the Year for 2020 is, drum roll again, Mpho, the Deputy Auditor General and the CEO of the Office of the Auditor General, Tsakani Maluleke.
La.
Tsakani. Unfortunately, I think she had to step out. She did send us a message. She's got an emergency at the office that she's dealing with, but I think she's excited to receive this award. She's excited when we have an event probably next year, when we're out of these restrictions, she'll be so excited to receive this award. All right, Mpho, then the next one, it's a tough one. I hope I'll be able to read the profile without crying because this person is very special to us. We are going to be awarding our first Lifetime Achievement Award to this wonderful, wonderful woman. So now for the darling of the AWCA, our mother, founder, and all-round superwoman and rockstar, a chartered accountant qualified at Deloitte. She is an entrepreneur, corporate leader, and champion for transformation, governance, held in high regard both in South Africa and internationally. She is the founder and executive chairperson of the African Women Chartered Accountants Investment Holdings, a woman-owned and led investment company. Amongst the key executive positions she has held are the managing director of Viamex Logistics, a subsidiary of Transnet, a group FD of Transnet, and an executive partner at EY in charge of public sector across Africa. We all know she's very passionate about public sector. Previously, she served as a non-executive director of SAA, Armaments Corporation of SA, MTN Group, South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, FIFA, Eskom, Altron Group, to name a few. And her current position, board positions are at Toyota, Xinex Foundation, and the PIC. She is the founder member of AWCA, and as you know, as I said earlier, within AWCA, she played a vital role to bring the chartered accountancy profession to young women from previously disadvantaged communities and continues to mentor them, that I can attest to. And she has made sure that we address the AWCA's long-term financial sustainability by establishing the AWCA Investment Holdings. She's positive about Africa's economic prospects and never hesitates to play the role of evangelist for entrepreneurship. She's very passionate about investing in people. She was recently appointed as the chairperson of the Sugar Association of South Africa. As a widely traveled executive, she always finds time to act as an ambassador for her country and the African continent. She was named one of the top 20 most powerful women in business and public sector in South Africa and was once a finalist for the Businesswoman of the Year award. She is a wife, a mother of two, a proud member of the International Women's Forum, and a fellow of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. A true Mbokodo and inspiration, she embodies the ethos of developing as you lead, lifting as you rise, She had demonstrated impeccable and excellence in every endeavor and whatever she does, and continues to do so. And drum roll, Mpho. A truly deserving recipient of our inaugural Lifetime Achievement Award goes to Cindy Mabaso Koyana. Nizivele Mosnani, nimbonile sinika ne-homework. That's what she does. So those are the 2 hours I had. I have the privilege of announcing. Congratulations, ladies. You deserve these awards. We are so proud to be associated with you. And over to our MCs.
Thank you very much, Buhle, for announcing our last reveal. It's been an exciting... It's been an exciting morning. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Buhle. It's been a very exciting morning, and we are very proud of all our ladies and that are making such wonderful contributions to our lives and how things are done, and the access that we now have in all areas of our lives. So what I'd like to do now is to just say thank you to everyone. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone for making contributions, staying engaged. But with specification, I'd like to say thank you to our keynote speaker and 2019 Woman of Substance, Dr. Mahlati, who reminded us that as we reimagine, we need to have a purpose, be intentional and deliberate as we forge forward. Our fireside chat Dr. Mampumzile Mlambo, as she fired us up with a discussion where she challenged us to change, to be change agents, and in all spaces that we are in our leadership roles, and not to keep quiet, but speak up at all times and keep pushing, even though we may be discouraged at times, but not to lose the energy. And also to our panelists, where we discussed economics, education, and social issues, where we wanted to together reimagine. And I think we've done a wonderful job in doing that together with them. And we've surely realized that we cannot do it alone. We need to collaborate. And as we know, because it takes a village to raise any child. Also, our recognition award recipients, as they showed us today, that it starts with us. It starts with us doing things in the spaces that we in, making an impact in the spaces that we in, and creating opportunities for other women and allowing them to move and make a contribution or participate in our economy, in our education, and in our social matters. And finally, on my side, my co-facilitator, my co-pilot, well done, Mpho. It's been an amazing time together. We've had such a wonderful reunion, and thank you very much for being such a great co-pilot. And over to you.
Thank you, Madam Colorful. I was wondering this morning what color you're gonna wear, and I'm a shirt lady, so I had to put something orange. I was planning to come white. That's the life. But thank you. I just want to say thank you to all the people who have attended. Special thank you to the men who are in this room. I'm saying special thank you because you've heard some of the challenges that we are facing, and you are taking it back to the boys' clubs. Let it be an agenda item. How do we build women in our country? And let's take it to our homes. And thank you a lot to AWCA for putting this together. The limitations of not meeting do not stop us from working. We continue to work in our spaces. We continue to change the world in our different spaces. A lot to the president of AWCA and the deputy president for allowing and creating this space and keeping this space alive for us to make a change in our country. I see people are feeling challenged, they are excited, and I hope the excitement and the challenges do not end tonight. When you sleep, I hope that we don't sleep with those challenges, but we wake up tomorrow renewed with power and courage to know that Mepumzile are out there rooting for us. Messi India out there rooting for us, that you can run to Josephine and say, Josephine, I need a sister to hold me because I'm struggling to move on. Were you able to go to Shamila and say, look, these are my solutions. Is it sustainable? How do I change values within the organization where I'm sitting? And I say thank you to you in advance, because we are going to see a better South Africa and a better Africa for all. Let's go make that 2063 dream agenda and dream that for the Africa we want a reality. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Bye, everyone. Bye. It's sad leaving.
I know, I don't want to go. I want to be the last one to log out. Thank you very much, everyone. And please don't forget to back a buddy via our link that's in the chat, where you can contribute towards funding a student in this time of lockdown and where we're struggling with the pandemic. Thank you very much, Mpho. It's been great spending some morning with you and late nights.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you. Goodbye. Have a good day.